listening to the Legendary Wrestling Obsession podcast with your hosts, Corey Draper and Jeff Hughes.
The Busters didn't know what happened to him there. My word, Anderson can't believe that he's beside himself with anger. And Tully Blanchard is beside himself, almost unconscious.
Good down home cheating. Good down home cheating, sure.
All right, welcome back for another week of the Legendary Wrestling Obsession podcast. I'm Corey Draper here with Jeff Hughes.
It is episode 3, if you're looking at a list, but really episode 2, where we're going to watch episode 2 of Saturday night's main event.
That's right. There's been a lot going on since the spring, through the summer, and into the early fall for the WWF. And we're going to look back and find the juiciest bits, the best content, the stuff that means the most to this upcoming show, set it all up, and get us off to reviewing the second ever Saturday night's main event.
I gotta say, it's starting strong. These programs are better than I remember, or maybe it's just I don't remember anything.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, as I mentioned, having not recorded the first 4, 5, 6, how many ever it is, Saturday night's main events and only seeing them the one time, there's a lot more there to take in because it's like this new content in a way. It's this re-watching from in some cases 30 years ago, whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's been a long time since I've seen these. Maybe saw it one more time sometime in the modern era, but it just is.
The other thing perhaps is that even from like 12 years old to 15, I just became so cynical, hardened, and bitter against the world. Just kidding. I still enjoy lots of things. Life is good.
Yeah,
Wrestling is good.
But yeah, and as we stated in the last episode, there's things that we probably didn't even enjoy that much as kids that we enjoy more now as adults and find more humor in than we did then.
Absolutely. Oh, it is so different, the perspective now, and I now love all the guys that I was just wanted them off the screen at one point, but now I just can't get enough of these guys. Really, like, I thought the Bushwhackers are so goofy, but I prefer them when they were a bloodthirsty heel team, but,
yeah.
I'll now give them a chance again. I guess I'm currently holding my nose when I think of Doink, but maybe I'll be able to let him back into my heart too.
That's right. I think there was some pretty good stuff with him, at least the Matt Bourne version. I think the Ray, whatever his name is, the second one, the sort of the good guy Doink, that was
right.
That was some pretty bad stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a way to rewatch some of this stuff and kind of see it for the first time again.
Okay, so what do we got?
Okay, yeah, so there's so much information, there's so much stuff that happened. We're obviously not going to cover all of it, but we tried to peel through what we had access to, the different shows, matches that came up, some important things that happened over the summer months going into the fall. So we thought we'd kind of run through that, hopefully finding some laughs along the way and get ourselves properly set, properly ready to take in that second Saturday night's main event. Hang on for the ride. Before we really talk about the stuff that is related to WWF, I just ever so briefly wanted to talk about Hogan's Japan matches that happened right around this time in June. And everyone's well aware that Hogan spent a lot of time wrestling in Japan, and most of the wrestlers did. There was a lot of money to be made, and we know there's a lot of classic great matches that happened in Japan that we never saw on Canadian or American television. But geez, when I looked at the list of matches that were on this particular tour, I was really quite confused because we know Hogan's at like the peak of like world, success as this hero, yet I'm looking at his matches and I'm really quite surprised. So the first match I came across was Antonio Inoki, who's like the big hero for like, the federation they're in there wrestling with. I believe that would be New Japan Wrestling.
He was a national hero, not just a wrestling hero.
Exactly, yeah.
There was Inoki versus Muhammad Ali, of
Yep.
course, which got international attention.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that had bona fide, he was an actual athlete. Without looking at Wikipedia, I expect he was a proper black belt, probably was in the Olympics. I'm just, he was truly a hero to the Japanese people.
Yeah, it was a really big deal. So there's a match listed, him and Kenji Kimura, I probably said that wrong, but versus Hogan, and guess who his partner is? Iron Mike Sharp.
Isn't that wild?
Like,
I know.
What?
I know. He was getting one of those Enhancement Plus treatments over here where he was on TV always jobbing, and he would be able to dish out a little offense. He was one guy because he had the loaded wristband, so
That's right.
he was familiar and he was really good, but he didn't beat anybody.
Well, in other territories, he was like a main eventer in some ways, or at least an upper mid-card kind of guy. But in the WWF, you're quite right. He was essentially used as enhancement talent. If you look at card results, he was often in those opening matches against other enhancement talent, and then he would win all those matches. So he did win quite a few matches, but just never the premier ones, never the really high profile matches.
Not on TV.
Not so much, yeah. It would be hard to find a match of him winning in WWF. So just a couple more that are really funny. Again, I didn't write down who the opponents were, but Hogan teaming with Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch.
Wow. Now, I do know that those guys were tag team champions at one point.
Of course, yeah. This isn't that long after it, so, within range, of when they were the champs, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That would be Adonis and Murdoch. And I haven't really ever seen a lot of that footage, maybe in some of my YouTube searches. But I'd be more interested in, searching Adonis with Ventura than I would Murdoch.
Yeah, I went looking for this stuff, and what I was able to find was like matches in Japan of Hogan and somebody versus, Murdoch and Adonis, not teaming with them.
Right.
But this essentially tells me that Hogan's wrestling some of these matches as a heel.
I wouldn't dispute that.
Yeah, it's really neat. Okay, so that brings us, let's bring it back to North America. Let's come back to home soil here. And that would bring us to a Piper's Pit that involved the U.S. Express. So this is this follow-up to like the tag team division, them losing their titles. So it's pretty funny. I won't go too into blow into blow, but you get in and Rotundo and Wyndham are sitting on either side of Piper, and of course Orton standing behind him. And Piper, right away is into his usual, calling them losers and about it, losing belts. And Wyndham makes a good point, which many people make to Piper, is like, you've never won it. You've never won a belt. Oh, obviously only talking about WWF. And they're back and forth, and they get pretty snippy. They get mad and stand up at one point, and Wyndham's threatening Orton, and Rotundo's getting mad at Piper. So he's again, no, calm down, sit down. And so at some point he pulls out like a roll of toilet paper, and he starts giving it like their tissues. He's like, for you to cry, like wipe your tears away. And so they end up leaving the set, but they throw this roll of toilet paper at Piper, and it hits him in the stomach like a grenade went off, and he sells it really well. Like he really has this big overreaction. It's really funny.
Only Piper could take damage from a roll of toilet paper. Oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah. It really was funny. I didn't intend to watch this. I just kind of stumbled across it.
Right. Yeah. Well, Piper, man, I almost think like that. It's thanks to him that people will look at Hogan's in-the-ring charisma, but out of the ring, he's no match for a Rowdy. I mean,
no.
Hogan never got his own, hanging and banging with the Hogan, and like interviewing people,
yeah.
For all his accolades and
right.
success. I mean, really, the star of the show is Roddy
yeah,
Piper.
We talked about how there's all these different people running, the body shop and the this and the that, but like Piper was the only one who was like so consistently on those shows. Like they almost went to him every single time. It's really interesting that they wanted to keep, because he was just so good. It was just like, we can't not put this 2 or 3 minutes of good television on. So that brings us to a match. So the chase has been on for a long time. We got the U.S. Express against Sheik and Volkov. And we got McMahon and Bruno on the call. And this time on this...
Okay, now can you tell me... Okay, we're not talking about Saturday Night's Main Event
no,
yet, by
this
the
is
way.
After that.
That's
this
right.
Is definitely after that.
It'll be a little while before we get to the actual card, because we have so much set up and build to discuss, encounters, interviews, matches. So just to distinguish...
Yeah, I've got some dates here, and the dates I'm going to be saying are sort of the date they aired, as opposed to the date they were filmed. So keep that in mind. But
right.
June 17th, there's, a version of this match is going to go on one of the television shows, one of the television properties. And so what we hear is we see Captain Lou coming out with the U.S. Express, but this time we can hear the boss. We can hear Bruce Springsteen, and it's like, the crowd is going nuts.
Oh.
They're so excited for them to come out and come after these heels and try, this title match. And so it's really neat. I think the look and the sound of it just really got me fired up. The footage isn't the greatest; it's a little bit grainy, but I mean, it was giving me some chills.
All the better, the grainy. Like I can't take too realistic, a la Blair Witch Project. That's that phony shaky.
I just meant the quality of the film, as opposed to it wasn't shaky. Yeah,
that there's a nice personal touch to that grainy or smoky footage.
So this match is really familiar for us. I mean, most people have seen the WrestleMania match between the two of them so many times, because Coliseum kept putting that match on so many different tapes, and I saw it so many different ways. But watching them wrestle, it was just very familiar. And just before we get into the match, a couple things is that Rotundo was always Rotunda with an A. But when he came to the WWF, McMahon didn't like that, so he changed it to an O. So Mike Rotundo is, actually Mike Rotunda.
Oh.
It was just kind of a strange
I
one.
had, I've never really thought about it, but now that you mention it.
And in that time, Wyndham would often get the wrong chyron, meaning that, like, up on the screen they would put a Y instead of an I, like W-Y, Wyndham, as a mistake.
Right. Okay, so it's, I think, when I think about Barry Windham, I do not think why.
Yeah, it's an I. It's definitely an I. It's just that's a typo. But anyways, so there's one little spot from WrestleMania that I should have brought up in the last show, but I just want to do it now while we're still touching on the U.S. Express. And it's a sort of something I think has been like a lost art in wrestling, and they maybe never went to it as much as I thought they should have. So in the tag match, Sheik and Volkov get Rotunda down, and they're beating on him for several minutes. The match isn't that long, so it can only be so long. But he's in trouble, and at one point, Volkov's got him pinned down on the ground. I think he's on his belly. That's Rotunda, and Volkov's controlling him and maybe hammer fisting him or something from the top. And he's so beat up, but he uses his wrestling skill to reverse it, and he actually ends up on top of Volkov with a hammerlock. But he's so beat up that he actually can't hold him down. You know what I mean? And then he ends up. Volkov gets out of that, and the match continues. So the point is that I'm surprised that they maybe don't use something like that a bit more in a match, like where these guys that are true wrestlers, that they're hyping up their amateur background, that they kind of don't use that as ways to switch momentum.
Well, especially nowadays with these young punks, you'd never know that the wrestling used to be an Olympic sport, you lousy flippin'. Well, I never thought about that, but jesting aside, there, I think, is a real de-emphasis on wrestling as a sport, today, and what you're mentioning pushes wrestling as a sport. Wyndham's able to use, I would have thought that more so out of Rotunda, because he goes on to really push the varsity club angle, and he wears the outfit. I think he probably even puts on the ear protectors. If not him, I think he does.
He doesn't. Steiner does, but
okay.
But I mean, he definitely has. He has what looks like his collegiate wrestling outfit on, as part of the varsity club,
which is great, because if you're bouncing around from persona to persona, it's kind of cool to fall back on something that's legitimate and real, because then nobody's like, oh man, Repo Man, give me a break. Like a guy who's been through 4 or 5 identities winds up with something that's a bit of a throwaway,
The world title run's coming any day now.
And that's right. The Repo Man's on his way up. But Wyndham, is a cowboy shtick, in the long term, from lineage, and then subtly, even as it goes down the road, there's always just whether it's his kind of cowboy boot style,
his vest or whatever,
or even just the way he wears his kerchief, he never lost that blackjack flavor.
A little bit, yeah.
And so, Rotundo was more the technical wrestler, and Wyndham was more the cowboy in a very subtle way. And also long term as you watch them go forward. And then, speaking of crazy shticks, Rotundo also falls prey to IRS.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of time for us to explore that.
Yeah, there'll be no end of that. So end of the match. It's what we expect from them. There's some back and forth. I did laugh hard at the beginning though. Wyndham and Volkov are mixing it up back and forth. And at one point, Wyndham whips Volkov into the ropes, and Volkov would kind of do this sometimes, where he would come off the rope and avoid his opponent. So he would, at an angle, he would do like a cartwheel.
Right.
And then he would be so proud of himself, he would turn around and cheer, and Wyndham times it perfect and just drop kicks him in the face as he turns back around. It's really funny.
I can't say enough about Nikolai Volkov. I think I've said to you, if you go back and look at pictures from him about 5 to 6 years prior to this Volkov that we met and absorbed, did he ever look like the scariest, strongest guy that was just drinking beer at the end of the bar, and if you pissed him off, you were dead? He was not and I don't think he had to take roids. He's just one of these natural.
Yeah, he's very thick.
Yeah, it's a different kind of muscles. He's not like sculpted. He wasn't like the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe body, on so many of these guys, which also looked cool.
Rhino or something.
Yeah, but go back and look at 70s Volkov, and then I watched him in the ring too, and amazing feats of strength that he would pull off, and he was scary looking in the 70s. I mean, this is me just 2 years ago going like, holy cow, Nikolai Volkov looks scarier than Nikita Koloff at his
Right, yeah,
you know,
he
at
definitely
his-
had a different gimmick. I'm forgetting it now, but he was a tag champ with under a totally different gimmick in the 70s, like in WWF.
Volkov?
Yeah,
Okay, so then I saw early Volkov as far as persona.
yeah. He probably was under a different name.
Okay, well, we'll
Yeah.
we'll check out that for corrections.
Yep.
But it's a different physical specimen.
Yeah,
But as we'll see, he's still got incredible power, and
Yeah.
as Corey's saying, he's got this terrific agility,
yeah.
and also
And
he's a
at
great.
this point in his career,
one more
it's
thing,
comedy, right? It's like,
he's a great singer.
oh yeah, yeah. We skipped over the anthem.
He's got a wonderful voice.
Yeah.
Because I've actually done a bit of singing. You'll get to know us as these programs unfold. But from time to time, I have sung for audiences, whether it's a parking lot in a liquor store, or actually there was a fun run where thousands of people left the building as I began to sing. Bye bye. On your way. See you later. It was a,
Yeah.
a bit of a disaster, but so yeah, it's singing wise. Volkov gets thumbs up.
Yeah. So back to the match. So yeah, Wyndham and Rotundo, doing well at first, and then there's a sneaky Sheik does a knee from the outside, like Rotundo's bouncing off the ropes, and Sheik's able to sneak the knee in, and that gets them the advantage. And finally, after a couple of different times of seeing Sheik, he's never doing any moves in these matches. Like in the Saturday's main event, they just get their asses kicked the whole time, and in another match, he doesn't do anything. So I finally get to see him do a side suplex, because there's stuff that Sheik did that was looked so good, better than almost any, and we still haven't seen one. I'm gonna have to wait till something else comes up. But the back side, the side back, belly to back Sheiky suplex, which other than Mr. Saito is the best in the business. There's it's Saito, it's Sheik, and then there's a huge cliff, and then everybody else. And to this day, now people the announcers in modern wrestling will call it a Saito suplex, but they can do it as well.
Now tell me again, which way did Saito do it? Belly to belly, or belly to back?
But off to the side slightly. So he's not directly behind you. He's kind
That
of on
becomes-
a 40. He's on a
right.
45-degree angle behind you.
Because that can become a pinning maneuver, like a German suplex or something.
Yeah,
But
so
that's
it's
not,
slightly different than a German, because a German you're directly behind your opponent
yeah,
when you throw him.
and you put their shoulders on the mat,
Yeah.
and arch your
Yeah.
back, bridge your back, right?
Yeah, with the way Sheik and Saito would do it is they were more off on their hip a bit, and so slightly to the side, and that sort of opened up a window, a lane for them to really slam that guy back in a way that didn't have them on top, the person on top of themselves.
What I would have liked to have seen was the feat of strength that the Iron Sheik was capable of, where he took these really heavy-looking
Yeah.
wooden clubs, and he just
Persian clubs, I believe they referred to that. Yeah.
Persian clubs, right? Well, I really only ever saw it looking back. At the time, I never saw this gimmick,
Yeah.
this shtick, and he revisited it in a very brief run he had in WCW.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I saw a clip of him doing it in front of Sting, but
Okay, yeah. They
Anyway,
definitely had a match.
it is an impressive.
Yeah, there was. I remember hearing that, that was always the joke, is all these big, strong guys back there, but almost none of them could do it. He was the only guy that because there's a technique to it, I guess.
Well, he had incredible core strength for
Yeah.
these suplexes and this club trick.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
too bad for him, though. Andre didn't like him. Would throw him around, stretch him.
So that suplex leads to a camel clutch. So it looks like the U.S. Express is in pretty big trouble here.
Make you humble.
break your back.
Better
So-
Wyndham, Mike Rotundo, I make you humble, come a clutch.
So yeah, Wyndham gets in to break the count, and then basically Sheik goes for a suplex, goes for a vertical suplex, holding Rotundo straight up, feet to the sky, and Rotundo reverses it, he shifts his weight, and he comes down into this small package, and Nikolai comes into the ring, and basically takes Rotundo and shifts it, so now that Sheik's on top. So now Sheik's going for the pin. But the funny thing is that the ref catches him, so the ref chases Nikolai out of the ring, and then Wyndham sneaks in and shifts it back. And then the ref comes down and does one of the fastest counts you've ever seen in the history of wrestling. 1, 2, 3, and bang, new champs.
I love it.
Yeah, it was great. And the crowd goes nuts.
Gee whiz, I got to watch this.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty fun. So, that was an important happening. There's a title change, and, really, you just wanted to get that in there. Obviously, the U.S. Express aren't on this upcoming Saturday's main event, but, didn't want to miss out on a chance to talk about that. And also, obviously, Nikolai's such a huge part of the card coming up, so felt it was very relevant.
Yeah, things move quickly right now as far as the tag team scene. I have to concentrate to be like, okay, who and what? Because shortly we'll be talking about
Another match.
exactly, and a cigar
That's right.
gets heavily involved.
We'll get there. So the next thing coming up sort of chronologically, I believe it was like happened in May and aired later, and it's another Roddy Piper segment, and pardon me, it was June 29th, and a certain Hillbilly.
Yeah, well, Hillbilly Jim has been recovering from an injury, we are told, and he shows up on Piper's pit, and it's the typical scenario. They always put somebody in a vulnerable situation, alone, unguarded, with Piper, who has Ace Cowboy Bob Orton behind him with his cast. So it's always the tension that the guest is going to get double teamed. And Hillbilly Jim is not invited to sit. And as a matter of fact, he's so cautious that they are awkwardly shooting off camera. I mean, that happens a lot with Piper's Pit, because he doesn't want to be scripted and he doesn't want to sit still. And, it works in the long run, but it could be a nightmare for production. Anyway, so yeah, Hillbilly Jim comes on, and it's the usual thing. Piper's mouthing off and provoking him until things look finally so dangerous because Ace Cowboy closes in slowly but surely. He gets closer and closer, and the face is like, hey, wait, and he has to call for backup. And in comes a guy almost as tall as Big John Studd.
Wow.
Actually, we would have to look at the numbers. But Uncle Elmer, a big bowling ball, a huge man, comes in, and Piper's great at turning on the coward when he needs to. It's not as usual, but, it's fun when he does it. And so they end up running away.
Yeah, I do think I saw that a long time ago, so that does sound very familiar. But yeah, Elmer's sort of like, as far as the big men go of that time, he was sort of the goofiest looking of them all. But hey, he's a big guy and
doesn't need to do anything except stand there.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the next one again is something that's not super. It is relevant to the Saturday Night Event card, but it's again we just can't pass up the opportunity to look at it. And we know at WrestleMania 1, I talked about in the last episode, it was sort of like I had wished that, Tito had wrestled, Valentine instead of Junkyard Dogs. I think we would have got a lot better match, and I think they could have created a much better moment. But, here we are in the summer of '85. The chase is on. Tito's coming back, and I had to go back and look at it because I'd seen a lot of this stuff. The one thing I think I'd never seen was when Greg Valentine took the title from Tito Santana.
I probably haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty unlikely I've seen it.
I'm pretty sure I'd never seen it. I watched it last night. It did not look familiar. I knew some of the details of it. But so in a shoot...
Oh, wait. You just said you found it.
Yeah, I did watch it last night, yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't have it set up beforehand, so,
Okay, so go on.
Yeah, so in real life, from shoot interviews with Tito, he talks about around that time that a real-life knee injury started to really affect him in the ring. He started really having a lot of pain. He was getting through his matches, but it was getting bad. He even recounted one story of Andre having to carry him up the stairs to his hotel room because he couldn't make it up. When he wrestled that night and he had to wrestle the next day. So finally, he agrees to go get this minor procedure done. And so they have to write it into storylines. So they decide that they're going to do this Greg Valentine angle. So there's a match. And at this point, Lou Albano is Greg Valentine's manager, and because Jimmy Hart's not even in the WWF yet. And Tito's coming to the ring, and Lou Albano's in the ring with Valentine, and Lou Albano comes over to the ropes to kind of prevent Tito from getting into the ring. And Tito hasn't even taken his jacket off or anything yet. And Valentine sneaks around the ring while they're arguing, and he gives a couple of quick boots to the side of Tito's leg. I mean, it doesn't really look that devastating, but Tito sells it like he's been hit with a sledgehammer, like he's limping bad for the rest of the match. And maybe it's sort of that idea of he really does have a knee injury, so let's work around this. So Tito gets in, and for people who maybe are a bit younger and only started watching around maybe, let's say, 90, 91 or something, Tito Santana doesn't always get a lot of respect from those people because they sort of see him as this glorified jobber. But man, people that got to watch this early 80s, mid 80s Tito, he was hot. He was a huge baby face. Crowds loved him. And he was a great performer, and in a different sort of world and time, he easily could have been the world champion.
I believe he was considered for a world title run.
Absolutely, yeah.
And of course, we got to see him on AWA wrestling in Winnipeg when we were really young.
Yeah,
and
for a little bit.
Yeah, It was only a little bit, but somehow it made a huge impression.
Yeah.
Because when I did get to see more of Tito, I was like, I know
Yeah.
him. I love him.
Always loved Tito, and he just, around this time, his Intercontinental title runs and some of his earlier stuff he did with, like, he had a couple of tag title runs. He was just so good. So he gets in this ring on one leg, and he is just firing off on Greg Valentine, like just beating the crap out of him. And the match goes back and forth, and I'll kind of like skip us to the end.
But you're saying behind the scenes, they want to take the belt off Santana.
Yeah,
so
Santana
that
needs to take some time off here, so this is the setup for it. So there's this interesting point in the match where, Tito's has this big comeback, and he ducks a clothesline after, when Greg's trying to reverse things, and hits a really beautiful flying forearm. And there's a 3 count, but the ref looks after he's hit the mat, and Greg's foot is under the rope. So he slaps Tito on the back to let him know that, like, the match is still going on, but Tito doesn't realize it. So he gets up and he starts cheering to the other, to the camera side with his back. And Valentine just gets up real quick. A little bit of bad selling as far as, like, he kind of got up too easily there after the, the devastating flying forearm. And he just drives in with a knee to the lower back and pins him. And you're just like, what? Because I always remembered Greg Valentine did the leg injury. That was the whole idea. He put him out with an injury. But the injury comes after the match because basically he pins him, and then there's a skirmish after the match, and that's when Valentine puts the figure 4 on him, and that's where the kayfabe, broke his leg, and that whole thing. And so now he has to have the surgery. They do some, vignettes about that, and then he comes back in time for WrestleMania. Wrestles the Executioner.
Was Albano at this match where Valentine takes the belt?
That's right. He's the distraction at the beginning that that allows Greg to get these sneaky leg kicks into.
Wow, this is interesting for me because I don't think I had any wrestling magazines at this point.
Yeah.
Or at least if I was, I don't really remember seeing pictures of Albano with Valentine.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw him. I mean, I'm sure maybe in the back of my mind I'd known that, but it didn't ring a bell to me. I was like, Albano and Valentine, what's going on here?
Yeah, especially since he was so key to this rock and wrestling explosion.
Yeah.
And as we've said, it was Albano meeting Cyndi Lauper on an aeroplane that
That's right, yeah.
led to him being in the video and solidified this rock and wrestling connection.
That's right, yeah. So Tito says that, the reason they didn't wrestle at WrestleMania was that they wanted to save it for the house shows. So they were running their double shows, sometimes triple shows. And as a B card, they were going around selling out arenas with Valentine and Tito on top, Tito chasing Valentine. So there's a series of matches, obviously, from the time WrestleMania happens until now. So they kind of blow it off. They're at the Baltimore Civic Center. It's a house show, and it's a cage match. I believe you got a chance to watch this, right?
I did. Oh, yeah. It's terrific. I did watch it, and I'd never seen it. I've known that the belt went back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, not exactly, to be specific. Tito had the belt, and as Corey just explained very, very well, Valentine took it for a while.
Yeah.
And now the evening is set for Tito to get his revenge after he's been injured. And so they get into a cage. It's not the blue ladder cage.
No, it's the NWA AWA cage.
Yeah, the kind of cage that we're all used to seeing, or rather like a fence around, say, a schoolyard or something, where you can kind of climb it and get your foot into these diamond sort of sections.
Yeah. And because this is a house show, they don't have proper commentary on it. They've added Gorilla Monsoon clearly after the fact, and unfortunately it really dulls the crowd noise. I mean, you can see at times the crowd is jumping up and down and you can barely hear them. So
and he's unaffected by the atmosphere of the arena, so it really is much weaker than
I'd seen that a few times, that match. I don't remember the audio being so bad on it, but I just probably didn't notice at the time, or maybe they had redone it at some point.
It feels like this is the worst of everything come together. He has got nobody else to talk to.
Yes.
He's like at home on the couch, you can you can hear the peanut bowl rattling, and it just doesn't work. It takes away from the match.
Yeah. So, it's a longer match, so I'm not going to try to cover too much, but you really got to cover the end because it's a beautiful ending. So it's a really intense back and forth match. They're really hitting each other hard. There's several attempts by both men to escape. Greg finds himself a couple of different times where he's got like the top half of his torso out, and he's just like reaching for the floor with his hands, and Tito's dragging him back in.
Yeah. The one thing I did think was that Tito comes in so hot for revenge, but at about 75 seconds, he's like, I'm out of here, and starts climbing the cage.
that's
I'm like,
right,
wait a minute. I thought you wanted a bigger piece of Valentine before you. I know you want your belt back, but
we always laugh at the structure of a WWF cage match and the just absolutely backwards thinking of like the purpose of a cage match and the way to win it. And it's like, I'm going to kick your ass now. Get out of the way. I got to go through that door.
Exactly, because, really, there are so many heels who pull the bail out of the ring to get a breather.
That's right.
And,
the stall tactics.
Exactly. I mean, it's a key part of the prelude to any match is, the weight. And like Corey's described some great pre-match shtick, which is just comedy gold. And the bell hasn't even rung. I think that was the Midnight Express.
Yeah, that's right.
And Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah, the Sneak Attack episode that's on the bonus side of things.
Yeah. And just like, we're not talking about fighting yet. We're just talking about working the crowd and being entertainers. And so, but the other part of that is just like, it's a chance for heels to be cowardly and avoid their comeuppance and to stay out of
and to get the crowd all whipped up because they're like, come on, just fight. And it's
so
like, no, I'm not going to let you have that yet. I'm going to.
So the cage, you would think, ostensibly is there so that the heel cannot pull I'm on the run, you can't get your hands on me, and like the ref is counting and they're waiting patiently for the heel. That's what the cage should be there for, so that the heel can't run.
That's right.
But no, this is some silly, like, whoever runs away first is the winner, is the most, the most cowardly is the most heroic.
That's right.
Reverse thinking. That's well put.
Yeah, that's right. At one point, Tito hits the flying forearm. It looks really good, but hey, you can't pin a guy in this match, so that doesn't totally set it up. And there's another spot where Greg just lawn darts Tito into the cage. Like, he literally is like horizontal going into that cage. It looks really vicious. But really, what ends up happening is we come down to the end of this match is Tito decides he's all hurt, but he's got the advantage, and he decides he's going to climb the cage, but in the middle. He's not in the corner. He's like in the middle of the cage, so he's going up onto the top rope. The ropes are pretty flimsy at this day and age, so he's really bending. So he's pulling himself up on the cage, and he's getting near the top. He's getting his leg up so he can swing himself over. So at this point, Greg Valentine climbs up more towards the corner of the cage, and he's attacking Tito to stop him and put him back in. But Tito nails him with like a really good right hand, and Greg takes this bump where he falls down into the corner. And then he does this realization. He does a pretty good facial. He looks around and realizes, like, the door's right there, and Tito's still up on top of the cage. So Valentine calls for the door to open, and he's starting to escape to win, to successfully defend his title. But Tito does something that I don't recall ever happening at any other time, and he comes swinging around. He's sort of on the corner of that cage, and he swings around with his foot, and he kicks the door and just drills Valentine right in the face as he's leaving, knocking him back into the ring, and then Tito drops for the successful win.
Santana with a right hand drops the champion, and Tito's just about out of there. Santana with both legs now over the top of the steel cage. Look at Valentine. He just realizes where the door is. Open the door. He says, I'm coming. Wow. What a tremendous move by Tito Santana. There's your winner.
It was amazing booking. Yeah, it was great angle. It looked super cool. Safe, we hope. And the crowd really popped for it. It was excellent.
Yeah. And there's this crazy post-match where so they got the green Intercontinental title belt, and Valentine goes nuts, and he basically destroys the belt. He starts smacking it on the posts and the cage. He cracks the plates, and he destroys the belt.
What a sore loser.
Yeah, and then Tito comes in and chases him off and holds up this damaged goods to the crowd, and they cheer like crazy. So it's funny, all these years later, though, there's a pretty good story about that. So there's a shoot interview series called Kayfabe Commentaries. I believe Sean Oliver is the name of the host, and he did a series where he interviewed Tito and he interviewed Greg about their feud, and then he brought them together in the same room at the same time. And I was able to see segments of this. I didn't see the whole thing, but I saw this one part that really, was key. And it's where Greg Valentine asked Tito what he did with the belt. And Tito explains that his wife just threw it away. It was just garbage. You had these pieces. And the look on Greg Valentine's face, and he says, do you know how much money I could have made with that belt? Because, selling of belts has become such big business, and the collectors are so into it and pay such big money. Had Tito just kept the strap and the pieces of the belt, got it mounted on something, he could have sold that for big bucks.
Oopsie.
Yeah, right. It's pretty good.
That's for all you hoarders out there, you probably feel a little better about that
That's right.
pile of crap you've been meaning to deal with.
That's right. So that gives us a second title change over the summer. Important stuff happening here. And we'll swing back into maybe a little bit more directly related to Saturday night's main event.
Yeah, they really did squander WrestleMania and the heat that Valentine and Santana had. Too bad that wasn't a part of WrestleMania.
Yeah.
In New England wrestling history, rain or shine this Monday night, July 8th, Sullivan Stadium in Foxborough. All of the action getting underway at 7:30 p.m. Good seats are still on sale at all Ticketron locations in the area. A big night. It's going to be a one-night elimination tournament to determine who is the king of the ring. There will be a beautiful trophy awarded to the winner. Among the entrants in this prestigious tournament, you will see the Junkyard Dog, Tito Santana, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, B. Ryan Blair, Pedro Morales, Superfly Snuka, Ricky Steamboat, the Magnificent Morocco, the Iron Sheik, Cowboy Bob Orton, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Brutus Beefcake, Terry Funk, the Spoiler, and in addition, for the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship, Hulk Hogan will defend his belt against Nikolai Volkov. It is a night of wrestling action that you certainly don't want to miss. This Monday night, the WWF in Foxborough at Sullivan Stadium.
Okay, so we're on to a July 9th TV taping, and we see a match with Paul, Mr. Wonderful Orndorff versus a masked wrestler by the name of The Axe. And we ain't talking about Demolition.
Nope, it's not Bill Eadie, it's not the Masked Superstar, and it's not Axe from Demolition. It is, in fact, well, we don't know who it is, and we're going to have a little fun. I'm going to try to figure it out as we cover this little point in history.
That's
but
right.
further to the context, Heenan has placed a bounty
That's right.
on Paul, Mr. Wonderful Orndorff, because as we covered, he got fired by Orndorff and tore apart Piper's Pit. And now anybody can go in there and try to claim the $25,000 by taking out Paul, Mr. Wonderful Orndorff. So, all right then. I made one phony guess because really at who the Axe is. But let's watch it, and then I'll see if I can throw out a couple of more guesses. I think I'm going to lose this pretty badly.
Yeah, I thought he looked familiar, but I was not able to place it myself without investigating. The footage we're watching is a little bit dark, too. He looks a bit like a Killer Bee there.
He's actually pretty in shape.
Yeah, he's very in shape.
Guy.
Fit guy. He's got a yellow mask. Here comes Orndorff through the those orange doors. It reminds me of... I know this is one of the regular TV taping places, but it's that location where they actually come out of, just these two random doors. It looks so different than what we're used to in modern wrestling.
Yeah, the high school gym angle.
Yeah.
But it's not a high school gym.
Yeah, it's a big arena.
Yeah.
And comes Mr. Wonderful with his nice red red robe.
And those awesome sequins, very sparkly.
Yeah. So here comes the...
The Axe is on him already. So the Axe is taller. Quite a bit taller.
Yeah,
that's
Orndorff's
why at
not the
first
tallest
I
wrestler,
actually,
yeah.
I actually thought like Barry Windham for a second, but
Yeah, no,
but
definitely
more
not.
muscular than Windham.
Yeah.
So that height and those
That was a great
muscles-
flop there. Orndorff punched him and
Yeah.
he corkscrewed on his flop. And that's about
hard
the
to
end of
tell.
the Axe there as far as his offense goes. But we have to remember people aren't watching what
Okay,
we're
so
watching.
let's see. Did we see this guy in the AWA?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
He will debut in the WWF pretty soon under a character, and we'll see what,
Okay. Let's see. He will make his debut. So let's see. That guy. It's not Beefcake, is it?
No.
No, it's
No.
not. It's not big enough for Beefcake.
No, and also Beefcake's currently wrestling
Yeah,
in
of course.
the
Stupid
Federation.
guess. Let's see. Oh boy.
There
You
would be some level of, let's say, patriotism to his...
Okay. Well, that makes me think of Corporal Kirshner. Not the
Ding,
same
ding,
body.
ding.
Really?
That's Corporal Kirshner.
Wow. He gets
Yeah.
a lot bigger. I guess he roids up shortly.
Yeah. It was like, it took me a little while. There's a really good website that breaks down who different wrestlers are and what their, all their different things are. And there's a lot of different people listed as the Axe. And I was looking at some message boards, and somebody was like, that's Corporal Kirshner. And then somebody's like, no, it's not. And then it's this person, it's that person. They named a bunch of different people. So then as I was going through this website I found with information, and I came across the Axe that was Corporal Kirshner, who was WWF and had that. Like, the other people didn't have WWF ties, I guess. So I was like, okay, it's got to be it.
Well, I kind of wanted better things for Corporal Kirshner because he had a good look. I almost thought like he could have been a bulldog because he had that beef and that brown hair and, but he didn't ever really get a chance to shine in the ring, and he more or less jobbed for, elite level.
Yeah.
On house shows, he probably, different story.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly won lots of matches, but I've read where people said they didn't think he was the greatest worker. He really needed a lot of help in there from his, opponents had to really carry things for him. So, yeah, and he probably wasn't a very good promo, I would say.
Well, basically, when I first laid eyes on him, I thought this could be good, but I guess it didn't really pan out. Because, I mean, look, for example, Sergeant Slaughter was, good character, the whole nasty drill sergeant style of archetype.
Yeah.
But he didn't necessarily look like a very athletic type of guy.
No, never did. No. Even his younger days.
Even when they made a G.I. Joe figure, he wasn't, he was sort of a big pot-bellied guy, just really tall.
Yeah, the figure looked a lot more impressive than the man it was based on.
Right.
Yeah, so after a little flurry at the beginning, the Axe just, eats it. Orndorff pounds on him, and Jeff just, take back over there.
So, as I mentioned earlier, there is a bounty on the head of Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff, and who better to collect it than his arch rival at this point in time, which is Rowdy Roddy Piper. So who jumps into the ring after the quick match is over but Rowdy Roddy, and he's already in his ring gear. He doesn't have to take his shirt off or anything. He just attacks Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff. But here's the hilarious thing is he gives him a couple of punches and then throws him out of the ring over the top rope. And then he turns around to collect the $25 grand.
Yeah, it's like I eliminated you from a 2-person battle royal. I get the bounty.
Yeah, so that's
and he didn't looks like he's gonna hand him the bag.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just for 1 second going, what the hell? But Orndorff isn't finished. He comes back in, and a brawl ensues with Piper. Like not just a brawl, but a locker room clearing.
Yeah,
melee.
Ort gets in there first, so it's a brief 2-on-1.
Right, and then I think does Orndorff blade? We keep watching.
No.
That's a different clip?
That's different, yeah.
Anyway, that's right. I think there's about 20 wrestlers in the ring by the time they're done.
The footage isn't the greatest. I mean, I spot let's say Moondog Spot and Pedro Morales. I heard them say Tito was in there, although I never saw him. I recognized a few of the jobbers that were in there, but yeah, it's a really, a lot of wrestlers are in this ring holding them apart, yet they're still breaking away and getting kicks in at each other. And
yeah, so they're really still playing out long-term the whole Orton versus Piper. Oh, fuck, why do I keep saying that? Orndorff. It's not my fault. It's not fair. Orndorff, Orton. They're just so similar in that first syllable.
That's right. Yeah, it is tricky with the Orton and Orndorff, and it does come out. Okay, so that's going to bring us to a July 13th match, which really is a fallout from this, what we just saw with Piper and Orndorff. So it's a match between the two men. Getting at it, getting down. So they're at Madison Square Garden. So this is something we got through Madison Square Garden Network. It's funny that there's some very distinct Rowdy Roddy Piper fans in the crowd. It's a bit rare for the time. Back in the mid-'80s, cheering for the heels wasn't as cool as it became, later on. So it was neat to see some people. And one guy actually, in one of the cards I saw, I don't think it was this one, but he's got the Hulkamania shirt on, but then he's got the Rowdy Piper sign. So
I wanted to freeze frame that shot and show you the contrast of that guy. Yeah, it's the thing about that is the uglier and worse the sign is, the more authentic and genuine you can probably count on it being. Somebody actually spent some time, taking apart their Ritz cracker box so they could write on the inside with a marker. There was this really awful one amongst the stuff where Orndorff smokes Piper, and somebody had drawn the clumsiest refrigerator art, somebody smoking a pipe because Piper Orndorff is just as terrible. You'll spot the phony signs in the crowd from time to time where you can just tell that somebody from the WWF gave these fans, here are these prefabricated
that's right,
printer quality, professionally done, really glitzy signs to hold.
That's right.
I call bullshit.
So we got Piper and Orton in the ring, and very recognizable Madison Square Garden look. It's it's big time. Paul Orndorff gets the Hogan treatment. He's in the gorilla position, walking with the camera in the hallway come out to the ring, and gets a big pop. And it's worth noting that Paul Orndorff didn't have any music, so he was one of those guys that came out.
Never had a theme song particularly.
Yeah, there's a point where he starts using Hogan's theme song, mockingly, but...
Oh, right.
But you're right. I don't think he ever... And maybe in WCW, I guess they must have given him something.
But I accidentally was trying to look up something and came across Paul Orndorff theme song, and I was like, what? And there was one, but I think 95 or 4 or 6.
Yeah. One thing I noticed as he's coming out to the ring is that his left hand is wrapped up, and I'm not talking about like a Ronnie Garvin tape job where I'm going to punch you. More like my fingers are injured and like,
Yeah, a splint on one of his fingers, the big piece of metal.
That's right, yeah. So he looks like a little bit of trouble there. As expected, this match is just a crazy slugfest. It's really intense. Now, the only difference between this match and some of the other ones I've seen is that it's a bit of a longer match. They do slow things down a bit, but it's really a fight. It's not a wrestling match. It's like they're in there to like punch each other in the face, and
this will be consistent.
Yeah, exactly. And when Orndorff gets rocking and starts hitting those right hands one after the other, and Piper selling for him, the crowd just really gets into it. So
I didn't realize Piper did such a great funky chicken. Like he does, the whole like he's having an epileptic fit.
Yeah, some of his selling, like we saw some selling in the one match, was making us laugh. Sometimes it doesn't look so great. He's sort of better at delivering the offense than taking it. But certainly there are times when it's really funny. So
if Mr. T's punching him, nothing. But
right.
if Orndorff's punching him, everything.
He loves him. Yeah, he's willing to put up for him there. So yeah, so after obviously, Orndorff's on him for a little while, and then Piper is selling, and eventually he gets the heat on Orndorff, and he's doing a lot of eye rakes and things like that to disrupt the flow. And at one point, Paul finally, after taking a lot of damage, gets this reversal. He does this backslide, so he gets this near 2 count. But Piper, of course, is in better shape than Orndorff at this point. He kicks out, and immediately he's up, and Orndorff's slow to get up. So Piper's waiting for him on his knees, and gives him the old whoop, the old eye poke from the ground. It's pretty funny. And
one thing I got to ask is that I have memory. It's probably wrong, but anyway. I think that one guy was strangling with somebody else with a microphone cable, but now I feel like I saw it in a wrestling magazine or something like that, but I haven't spotted it in like the 3 or 4 matches that we've done as research.
Right. Yeah.
I'm waiting for the microphone strangle.
Yeah.
And I guess it doesn't happen in yours, or you would tell me, but
yeah, I haven't come across it yet either. So when you said it, it sounded familiar, but maybe we've conflated some other memory. Oh yeah. So there's this big exchange, and Piper's really selling the right hand, and of course he just starts doing that great like boxing with ghosts, like he's not even facing the right way, and he's taking swings.
yeah, that is really good. So disoriented, like he's fighting enemies on all sides.
And then he takes one more punch in the face, and he does what I would almost call like a reverse flare flop. He just like and he goes flying backwards, like feet off the ground.
Yeah, like the selling in this whole series of matches is fantastic.
And there's one part where I think he's on the outside, and Orndorff pulls him back in, up on the apron by his hair, and then into the ring to the point where his like feet are hanging on the rope, and I think he's like sort of he's horizontal, like, and then Orndorff just like lets him drop like smash face first onto the canvas. It's pretty good. The match continues, and Orndorff's getting the upper hand, but ends up becoming a DQ situation because Mr. Ace Orton, he pushes Paul Orndorff off the top rope when he's going up for a shot on Piper. He gets shoved off. The ref sees it, gives the DQ, and then of course the cash shot comes in and a 2-on-1 beatdown. And this is where we kind of maybe thought a minute ago when we were talking that this is where the blood comes. So Orndorff ends up with a bloody face, and the two of them are really putting the boots to him and beating on him a lot. They give him a double suplex, and then out it comes, and I can't even imagine. In my head, I'm like, what? The British Bulldogs. They come charging out to save Orndorff, and I'm just thinking like the British Bulldogs fighting with Piper and Orton. It just feels so like a dream. Like what?
Well, this is exactly pretty much the same booking as the match that I watched on the WWE Network, and I know we're about to cover it, but essentially I'll be saying what he said earlier. So we're going to go through that really quickly. I haven't watched the match you're describing, but it basically. That is exactly how I would describe the one that's currently available on WWE Network and that I was assigned to watch. I thought you were going to say Andre saves him.
That's the next one. So the interesting thing is the Bulldogs come in. Piper and Orton do not back off. They attack the Bulldogs and immediately throw, let's say, Dynamite out of the ring, and it's actually a 2-on-1 on Davey Boy.
Are we talking about the same match?
They probably are.
Okay.
Do you want to describe this part?
Well,
we can clip some of this.
Well, like
I'm sorry, on the list I have, it's me, but It must have
Well,
changed.
it's okay. I wanted to watch it then,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess, or something. I don't know. But regardless of us, a little bit of housekeeping seems like we both watch the same match and we're waiting to report on it. But it seems like it's the same match
Yeah.
because I did see the match. If there's only one where the Bulldogs come in.
I only saw one, yeah.
In the other cases, we're going to see Orndorff team with the other character that's involved. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
But this seemed to tease that we were going to see the Bulldogs team with Orndorff, which we didn't, and is the disappointing part. But yeah, indeed, getting back to like describing it, I had a feeling when the Bulldogs came in to break up the 2-on-1 that it was going to be this awful Piper and Orton clobber the Bulldogs and discard them like trash. And I'm like, no, you can't do that to my Bulldogs.
That's right.
Because that'll happen sometimes. But that's what happens to jobbers who try to come in and break up brawls, is they get beaten up and discarded and thrown out of the ring so that the heel can continue his stomping of the babyface. But the Bulldogs look like they're going to be thrown away, but no. So here's how we can figure it out. One of the Bulldogs has still got his T-shirt on.
That's right. Yes.
Okay, we were
Davey
talking.
Boy.
We're definitely talking about the same match. So I was worried that they were going to lose face, and I didn't want the Bulldogs to do that. So, as you say, a little bit of a fight breaks out between Piper and Orton and the British Bulldogs, and you start to imagine, oh, what could have been? It didn't lead to another match that I know of, alas.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look at the host show results. I mean, it's possible there's some kind of 6-man tag match down the road, somewhere else, but it's unlikely. They came out and like I said, they didn't want to be deterred. So like even though Piper and Orton discard them initially, they just keep coming and coming and coming, and eventually Orndorff's back up on his feet like rah, like crimson mask. And,
there we go. That was the image. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have to do. Then the Bulldogs have to play sort of. We're helping you and calm down, and you're injured and you're in no shape to take them on, and the whole kind of like holding them back, for his own good.
It was interesting. I was watching Dynamite Kid and Paul Orndorff stand beside each other, and I was like, Dynamite looks bigger. Like his arms and chest and shoulders, like as big as Paul Orndorff is. It's like Dynamite Kid looked bigger.
Well, he sure did have a lot of changes to his body over the years.
Yeah, for sure.
And This may be the golden age for steroids, which was for better or for worse. It led to some really cool looking physiques, but it maybe took too high a price on the wrestlers.
That's right. So at the end here, basically Fink announced that on August 10th, the main event is Piper and Ace Orton versus Orndorff and a partner of his choosing. So they leave this like cliffhanger.
Well, at that point you're thinking, which Bulldog?
Exactly. Yeah. The next piece sets up that main event they talked about. So we have another Orndorff match, and it's against a jobber. And what we see here is July 30th, Orndorff is in a match with AJ Petruzzi. He looked very familiar. I've seen him before. And it's funny. He gets on the mic, and he starts telling the crowd how he's going to collect the $25,000 bounty on Paul Orndorff.
I didn't see that.
So that made me like this guy a little bit better.
Petruzzi, I think I saw something. He was fighting SD Jones, and I'd never heard of Petruzzi. And unrelated viewing, I thought, oh, here's somebody that SD can beat.
Yeah.
And it was in Philly. I noted that SD Jones is from Philly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, good, because poor SD got squashed at WrestleMania
quite a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, or over and over, but famously at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So he was somebody, and the other thing about him was they made a toy. He was included.
That's right. He was in the LJN line.
Exactly, which gave him a certain amount of status. So you always wanted to see him have something to,
Exactly. Let him win a match.
be proud of. And I don't know that I actually ended up watching the match because we're reviewing a lot of footage to make these podcasts here. So I did have a glimmer of hope. I was like, SD, yes, I hope you get your hand raised in your hometown.
That's right.
And then he was wrestling some guy in kind of a sheepskin vest or something. And it sounded like this guy that you're talking about, Orndorff. What was that name?
AJ Petruzzi.
Okay, so he gets on the mic and starts jabbing.
So he starts saying how he's going to collect the bounty. So Orndorff makes his entrance. The match is going as expected. Orndorff's taking it to him. But while the match is going on, there's a disturbance in the crowd, and you realize that Piper and Orton have come to ringside, and they've kind of surrounded the ring. They're on either side, and they're starting to make like intimations that they're gonna like come into the ring. Like Piper starts putting his hand on the rope, and like he's starting to pull himself up, and then Orndorff kind of pays attention to him, so he steps back down and kind of backs off. But then Orton starts trying to sneak in, and the commentators are all like, they gotta get these guys out of here, and it's all kind of happening. So Orndorff at one point gets frustrated with this, so he just takes the jobber and just throws him out of the ring at Piper. So
Nice.
Piper picks him up and throws the jobber back in.
Fastball special.
That's right.
For you X-Men fans out there, when Colossus would throw Wolverine at the bad guys.
That's right. So at this point, I think Orton's really got Orndorff's attention, and Piper has now gone to the complete opposite side and is really starting to get up on the apron. But there's an even bigger commotion in the crowd, and they finally realize, and the camera pans over. Pardon me, it's the reverse. It's Orton is the one that's kind of, is off on his own, and you realize the camera works pretty good on this. Andre the Giant is standing beside Cowboy Bob Orton, and he doesn't realize he's there. It's really good camera work. And then you see Piper point at him like shocked, like he saw a ghost. They hit the bricks. They want nothing to do with Andre, so they leave. Andre's in street clothes. Orndorff's actually able to finish the match, pile drive, and pin his opponent, and then have a little
Wait a minute. He beats
Petruzzi?
Petruzzi?
No,
Petruzzi made a promise.
no bounty collected.
Oh, I believed him. He lied.
So yeah, there's a little bit of a get-together with Orndorff and Andre at the end, and, that's going to lead to another match we're going to see. Okay, so this brings us back to the August 10th return match, Madison Square Gardens, and that gives us this tag match where Paul Orndorff has now selected Andre the Giant to be his, mystery partner against Piper and Orton.
It's like both Bulldogs.
That's right, 2.5 Bulldogs.
Yeah, well, Andre the Giant, always a very useful component for any booking.
Yeah, so we see the match, and it's really quite funny. Jeff, tell us about it.
Okay, well, Andre, for all his size and strength, seems to be fixated on choking people, and I almost wonder why he doesn't use the sleeper as his finisher. We'll see later on how he chokes Bundy, but in the meantime, he's going to choke Cowboy Bob Orton. He's fixated on the cast because Cowboy Bob Orton, Ace, has really been hitting everybody with his cast, the plaster, the foreign object, if you will, that is permanently attached to his arm. There are comments like, how long's he been healing from that injury?
Yeah, he's had that cast 6 months.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool because it really helps the bad guys have a way of getting the edge,
Yeah.
And they use it over and over again to turn the tables and help with the booking of a match back and forth.
Right.
Anyway, so Andre goes right away after Cowboy Bob Orton's cast, and one sort of strange thing, in theory, there's this rigid plaster, hard cast, tough as a brick, and for some reason, Cowboy Bob seems to have taped the outside of the cast, like there's athletic tape wrapped around this, concrete forearm protector. Anyway, so he's unwrapping some athletic tape and uses it to choke Cowboy Bob Orton, and the crowd's loving it. There's just so much cheating going on from the good guys that, we almost pined for Jesse to be there to call him out.
Exactly.
Like, what is this, McMahon?
The opening sequence was really hilarious. Of everything I've watched for this episode, this match was the one that had the most joy. It was just so much good comedy. The way they were just pinballing around for Orndorff and Andre is really funny. They're just Piper is just flying around, just falling every time he gets hit. And I might be getting it out of order, but there's an amazing moment where Orndorff takes Cowboy Bob Orton's arm and uses it like a weapon, and Piper's already dazed in the corner, and Orndorff comes over with two hands holding Orton's one casted arm and then whacks Piper with it like it's a baseball bat.
Incredible. Yeah, really enjoyable match. And also seeing it for the first time is just, a special thrill. Yeah, I mean, Andre was smashing Orton's forearm across the metal fastening.
That's before he started working on it, trying to pull it apart.
Across the metal facening where the ring post connects to the turnbuckle. And this is solid gear hardware. It looks really savage.
That's right.
He's
really vicious.
I know this. He's trying to smash that forearm all over again. And actually, it's funny because at one point, Andre is so intent on removing this cast. The other thing is that they allege that it's not only a rigid porcelain cast. Well, I guess not porcelain, but anyway, plaster cast. But they say it's loaded.
That's
like
right. He always gets his fingers in there to adjust something.
Yeah, like there's a lead bar in there somewhere. Right. And so Andre, ostensibly, he's looking to get to the bottom of the cast. Right. He's trying to find out what is in there anyway. A roll of quarters or a piece of lead. But what's really funny is at one point, it looks like Andre is signing his best friend's cast. You know,
right.
like, Dear Cowboy Bob, get well soon. Your pal, Andre.
He's got him in what almost looks like a Kimura. I'm just
yeah, there's that too. It absolutely looks like a Kimura.
Yeah, so there's a big schmoz at one point. The ref seems to lose control, and Andre's doing the butt bash in the corner on Orton, and I took my eyes off that corner, and I kind of missed it. Jeff saw it better than I did, but
I was listening to Monsoon. Monsoon said, Orton raised the knee there, Andre crashing into it. So suddenly Andre's on his knees because...
Yeah, on his back, actually. Yeah, he falls all the way to the ground, yeah.
Yeah, well... yeah, maybe it's a two-part fall. Andre takes his time.
He
makes his way to the mat. You know, he just have a couple beers on his, while he's on his knees, and then get down to the mat. Anyway, so looks like Cowboy Bob's got the baby faces at his mercy. So Cowboy Bob is going to jump off the second turnbuckle to clobber Andre, but Andre sees him coming, and he raises his leg, and Orton's jaw boom, lands on the flesh of Andre's boot. And Orton's out like a light. His back hits the canvas.
And just at that same time, Orndorff had actually back body dropped Piper out of the ring as they were fighting. So he sees, Orton basically spin, like a corkscrew after he gets hit in the face and falls down in the middle of the ring. And he just kind of just dives on him. He just jumps on him and no more moves or anything. And just 1, 2, 3, the pin.
Fantastic booking. The crowd is on fire. This was really fun to watch. Lots of good laughs.
Yeah.
Piper's just incredible. I actually do wish that we'd gotten to see more Piper versus Hogan, which, was the promise made but never kept. I mean, WrestleMania, they've already got tag team partners, and it was really only at, would it be the Brawl for it all?
More to settle the score.
Right, of course.
And Wrestling Classic.
And Wrestling Classic.
And lots of house shows. But, I mean, and probably some MSG and some Prism matches that, but as far as big national audiences, only a couple times.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's just my memory, but watching this now, I'm like, wow, Piper is better here than I remember him, as we go on to watch through 87, 88, and even, till the early 90s.
He's gone in 88. So, he leaves he retires in 87, quote unquote, and then he comes back in 89.
Right. So, this is the best Piper. It's so good.
Yeah, for sure. So there is a speaking of Piper, there's a Piper's Pit segment after this, but part of television in this day and age and the house show circuit and all that stuff is they're not always 100% connected. So sometimes I notice things where something will happen, we'll see it on a house show or on one of these matches, and then something afterwards won't necessarily always reference back to it. It's almost like they're not 100% connected. Not everybody sees everything. Not everybody's sort of aware of all these different components and matches and interviews and stuff like that. So
I object. There's a certain X-Men comic which will show you the Watcher sees everything. He sees all.
That's right.
Big bald guy with pointy blue collar and a cape and lives on the moon.
Okay, so the week later, August 17th, it's a Piper's Pit with Andre the Giant.
Well, he's supposed to be there,
That's right.
But it's Roddy Piper with his bodyguard in the background, and I believe he's got the LGN figure of Andre with the longer hair, and there's a magazine too, and Piper's saying, oh yeah, well, Andre, he's got any guts, he'll show up, and he starts ripping up the magazine pictures of Andre, and just, it's Orton's keeping a lookout for Andre, and then it's almost like, fee, far, fo, fum. Orton looks around the corner and he's like, oh shit, here he comes. And then Piper's like, oh, and they're all freaking out. And when Andre shows up, it's like, oh, this was here when I got here. I didn't do that. That wasn't me. The ripped up pictures of Andre. And he's like, oh yeah, actually what I love about this one, he was like, oh yeah, you got your doll here. And Andre grabs it from him and Piper says, that's my doll. Really really good. And so, yeah, Piper changes his tune, starts kissing ass when Andre actually shows up, because this is one situation where usually Piper and his bodyguard intimidate and threaten. The tension is they're going to double team whoever the guest is. But that's no problem for Andre. He ends up, there's a T-shirt, some of the merch for Andre. I didn't really ever see it before, actually. It didn't look familiar to me. The Hulkamania T-shirt's very familiar, of course. But this Andre the Giant shirt, finally Piper recovers his nerves, and he blows his nose on the shirt and runs for the hills.
That's right. Throws it at him, yeah.
Yeah, throws it at him. And they hit the bricks.
That's right.
And Andre chases them off.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that segment. Really good.
One of the things related to the Andre feuds of the summer was in August 18th. It was a big event. It was in Toronto, and I remember it really clearly back from the day watching TV, seeing the highlights of it. And it's a match between Andre the Giant and Big John Studd, but another giant gets involved, King Kong Bundy.
We knew him as Boom Boom Bundy in the AWA, but he, like so many other big talents, came over to the WWF.
Yeah. So there was an episode we did that was a sneak attack special in our bonus episodes, which will be released sometime in the future. And we did talk about this because this was kind of one of these great sneak attacks. So Andre's about to cut John Studd's hair.
By the way, I was just going to say that my first look at him was at a card live. Yeah, Boom Boom Bundy was teaming with Jerry Crusher Blackwell in a big tag team battle royal in Winnipeg. And I cheered for Boom Boom because he was a face.
Yeah.
And I'm really reaching now, but it's possible he had the Bruno Sammartino hair, like a big curly afro. But now I'm really reaching.
Right. Yeah, so
in other words, yeah, I guess the real point is that he didn't make any appearances on TV. So it was kind of one of these wrestlers, it was a rare case of like,
AWA and just kind of
have no idea who he was. Suddenly he's in the main event, and he's, but he's so big, obviously, that it wasn't at all confusing, just that it was very uncharacteristic for somebody to just step into a main event kind of role without even one promo or anything on television.
Right. This footage I've seen, the end of this segment several times going back to my fan days, is because there's a ramp in Toronto, so the Maple Leaf Gardens would have an actual ramp, kind of like the WCW ramp, right to the ring, and the camera showing is Andre's getting ready to cut John Studd's hair, kind of retribution for what Ken Patera and John Studd had done to Andre to cut his hair. And all of a sudden, King Kong Bundy comes up the stage, like he walks up the steps, kind of almost into the camera frame, and all of a sudden there's this big man, this lumbering condominium, so to speak, moving towards the ring, and they double team him. Andre initially, is taking out Bundy, but Studd then dives at Andre's legs, and they get him down on the ground, and then they do multiple, I think 4 or 5 splashes on Andre, and there's a kayfabe sternum injury, which takes Andre out of action for a while.
I gotta say, I cannot think of any other point where this much human meat is in the ring to get, 3 hearts and 2,000 pounds.
Yes, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of weight.
Yeah, reinforcing the ring for this one.
But this action here is going to lead to a match we'll talk about in a bit, and also, of course, the Saturday Night Event match, the tag team match. This is all sort of like an ongoing feud between Andre and other big men, and we know he didn't like other big men.
Yeah, he had a problem with Big John Studd calling himself a giant. He also didn't like the way that John Studd went into the ring.
Yeah, stepping over the top rope. He also didn't. He told John Studd to stop calling him Andrea backstage, and he didn't. He kept saying in interviews, and apparently that was another reason that Andre was quite mad at him and would take it out on John Studd in the ring for real.
Yeah, you almost think that Studd would be able to hold his own, but I guess Andre did have a freakish strength with his size.
Yeah, once he got his hands on you and could just put his weight on you, I think he could do whatever he wanted.
The list of people who slammed Andre is longer than you think.
It's huge. It's massive.
Oh man, I think Howard Finkel got in there one time.
That's right. I've never seen it, of course, but there was a Joe Rogan interview of Jake the Snake Roberts many years ago, and he says that like on a host card, Andre said to him, "Slam me," and Jake the Snake slammed him.
Wow.
Yeah. If he liked you, he let you do it.
Ah. Look at this. He's going to try to cut his hair. This is despicable. Now, King Kong Bundy. This is despicable. Bundy. King Kong Bundy, Pearl Harbored, Andre from behind.
Okay, I just want to bring up a result I came across. There's no footage, but it's just a neat little side note in history. So Jesse Ventura is still actively wrestling, in 85. And there was a program that was being set up to put Jesse against Hogan, in a big way, like some sort of high-focused, match. And, of course, things happen where Jesse has to step away from wrestling because of some injuries. But before that happens, there are some matches. And I found on September 13th, Jesse Ventura beat Hulk Hogan by DQ.
I love it. A smirch on the record of Hulkamania. One of the few. That puts him in the lofty echelon inhabited by Leaping Lanny Poffo.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, that hasn't happened yet, but we know not everybody can beat Hogan. Ventura, Lanny Poffo, Ultimate Warrior.
He gives up some house show, countouts and DQs for sure, but it is pretty rare. They had really built up at one point where, like, Jesse was like the last. If Jesse was able to wrestle, he seemed to be like the biggest thing left for Hogan to wrestle at one point. After every WrestleMania, Jesse would always declare, "I'm gonna have to come out of retirement, to take out Hogan because nobody can."
Like Running Man.
Yeah. So no footage, but we've certainly seen footage in the AWA. They wrestled a lot. That was one of those things where it would have been like the match in the ring probably wouldn't have been that great, wouldn't have been that pretty, but the lead up to it, the sort of the spectacle of it all, like that's what it would have been like.
Did they have arm wrestling matches in the AWA?
Oh, definitely AWA. There's definitely arm wrestling matches, and even one for sure I know where Jesse breaks or hits Hogan with the arm wrestling table, and like as he's about to lose the arm wrestling match, he sneak attacks Hogan and does all that stuff. So yeah, they definitely have a history, but in the WWF we never really got it. There was just a couple of house show matches, which basically nobody got to see. So a lost little nugget of history in the WWF.
Well, you know what, Monsoon? I may have to come out of retirement and win this title.
Oh, boy, I'd pay to see that, Jess.
So there's something really neat that happens at the end of the summer. Jesse Ventura brings it up on a show. I was unable to find any of the clips for this, so just have to talk it through. And that's a trade. It's kind of like real sports here. So managers make trades. It's kind of this for sort of lost art of wrestling. And so Bobby the Brain Heenan trades Adrian Adonis and the missing link to Jimmy Hart for King Kong Bundy.
Well, I definitely have a lot of memories of Bundy with Heenan. Not so much with Hart, except for us reviewing now what happened in the past.
Yeah, so it's neat. I do remember this trade being brought up at the time. I didn't really put it together. I actually, last night in watching things, came across a Madison Square Garden match of Heenan with Adonis. And so Adonis is, in a match, and he's beating up on his opponent, and, Heenan's out at ringside and stuff like that. So that was kind of my only chance I really ever kind of got to see Heenan and Adonis together. So it kind of never made sense when I would hear about this trade. I'd be like, missing link, or Adonis didn't really ring a bell as far as, like, I knew them, but not with Heenan. So, the context of that is that this next segment is a Piper's Pit with the Heenan family. So, the new Heenan family minus Ken Patera. So, you come onto the set, you've got Piper in the middle, Orton behind him. He's got, so I guess actually it's kind of like Piper and Heenan are kind of centered, and then on either side of them is the giants. There's King Kong Bundy and Big John Studd. And they're sitting down there, and there's this giant case on a table in front of Heenan. And Piper basically announces Studd and Bundy is the greatest tag team of all time. Congratulates them on being so awesome. And they stand up, and it's quite the love fest. And the total opposite of what normally happens at a Piper's Pit, where he picks at people and, insults them and stuff like that. And so Bobby announces that they're a combined 810 pounds. And also that he's increased the bounty on Paul, Mr. Wonderful Orndorff, from $25,000 to $50,000.
There's a lot of math going on in this section of Piper's Pit.
That's right, yeah. You need a calculator. And he says it twice, because Heenan's really specific on this. I don't want him knocked out. I want him put out.
Yes, thrown over the top rope just once. That's all you need to do. Make 50 grand.
It was really funny. Piper's like, "Oh, can I see the money? Can I see the money?" And they open the case, and Piper leans right in, and the camera gets in real close, and he's like, and he's like, "No, mama," he says, or something like that. It's really funny. And he goes, he smooches the money, and then he tells Heenan, "Not only are you a genius, manager of the year, you're a box of fluffy ducks." I'm just like, and that's how it ends.
Fluffy ducks.
That's right.
Genius.
Okay, so that brings us to August 24th, where something really important happens. And we have a match between the Dream Team, the newly minted Greg Valentine and Beefcake, versus the U.S. Express.
Well, this would be a clip that gets played a lot as you were watching TV. We're talking about the title change because I didn't actually watch the match itself recently. I just have all these memories of Johnny V handing a lit cigar to Brutus Beefcake, Beefcake raking it across Wyndham's eyes, and that excruciating pain putting Wyndham out and allowing Valentine to make the cover so that the Dream Team could take the belts off of the U.S. Express, Barry Windham, and Mike Rotundo.
Yeah. I was unable to find the full match. I never have. I know that this clip, this 3 minutes and some seconds of the match, including just the end, it was on the Coliseum release of the history of the Tag Team Championship. And that's, of course, how I saw that. Plus, when they would show replays occasionally on TV. But looking back now, it's like, it seems, obviously they have the footage, but it doesn't seem like it's on any of nobody's posted it. It's not on WWE Network as far as I can find. So it's, it's a bit of a lost match. But yeah, it was always funny, this idea of this, the cigar. The cigar stuffed into Barry Windham's eye. And I know they would follow this up with things like segments with like Windham going to like trips to like the doctor's office to see if his eye was going to be okay and things like that. And, it makes me think that like they didn't know they were leaving yet. I almost kind of thought that maybe the title change was maybe in line with the idea that like they were like, hey, Barry's taken off, so let's get the titles off of them. But it doesn't seem like it. It seems like they were there a little bit longer than, when the title change happened.
All too soon, Barry Windham takes off, and it's a pity because he is a awesome top-level talent. Thankfully, the best is yet to come for our man, Barry Windham.
That's right.
I'm not so sure about Mike Rotundo, but they both have successful careers, terrific careers. I think that Windham himself, could have gone even further. And, well, we know that it's documented that there were bigger plans than worked out for Barry Windham, which was too bad because in a few years, he's going to be as good as wrestling gets. The look, the moves, the attitude, like he is a superstar.
Look out, look at Valentine. Luscious John just handed something. Captain Louis Albano coming up now. But look at that, some kind of a foreign object.
He ran right across his eyes.
Handed Brutus Beefcake and he used it on Barry Windham. He's blinded.
Another interesting thing from the with the Greg Valentine shoot interview I saw was he explained how they came up to him the night that he found out he was losing the title to Tito, like losing it back. And, how he obviously was disappointed. But in the same breath, the person telling him this, the agent, the handler, whatever, said, don't worry, you're going to be a tag champ. Like they told him as he's losing the Intercontinental title, you're going to be the tag team champion with Beefcake. And he was like, oh, okay.
Well, it's this is peak Valentine
Oh,
era.
yeah. Well, I think NWA is peak Valentine, but this is the peak of WWF Valentine.
Well, I suppose so. They were probably about equal. I think we're talking about some U.S. belt exchanges then.
Him and
NWA.
Flair were tag champions, and
So-
his dog collar match with Piper, it was really high profile at
heat.
Starrcade,
Yeah.
and
Okay,
I
well-
broke Wahoo's leg, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay. So that stuff I only know of mainly from the magazines.
Right.
But it sounds almost identical to
Yeah.
this WWF run or the several years or whatever it is. I mean,
Yep.
hot feud with Tito, tag run, and secondary belt run, which is what you just said told me happened to him before he came to the WWF. Tag
Yeah.
belts, secondary belts, and super hot feud. So everything but the dog collar, So Valentine, a bit underrated, really, because he had basically these things would make you think that he's going to be a world champion because
Yeah.
Flair had the tag belts with Steamboat at one point. Well, that might have been maybe a territory, but
Yeah.
anyway, all the greats except for Hogan. Hogan really didn't do much tag team championship
Yeah,
stuff.
I've never bothered to look at what kind of regional titles he might have held before his really made his mark. He seemed like he was always in these big marquee matchups as, the early days of Hulk, pre-Hulk Hogan, like as far as like, the different names he used and stuff like that. But
Right.
yeah.
That's about the only thing worth mentioning would be that Ed Leslie, his real life friend who became Brutus Beefcake, they early days they were supposed to be brothers
Yeah.
in kayfabe, and I think Brutus Beefcake was dizzy, and he Dizzy Boulder, perhaps. Yeah. And he had long, blonde, flowing hair. And there's a terrible promo out there of this version of Beefcake. But, yeah.
I think I read that it was Hogan's wife, Linda, that came up with the Beefcake as the suggested name for him. Like she was the one who kind of recommended that name.
Well, I guess we should say that this is also, well, no, Beefcake goes on to a lot more popularity in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so supposedly from that same date, although I'm not sure if it's the same card, there's a Prism event. That means Philadelphia Spectrum Wrestling. And
our new hero, Cal Rudman.
Cal Rudman. Yeah, let's take a little break there. I looked up some information about Cal Rudman, and I want to emphasize the Rudman because we have often been saying Redman, and we love this guy, and we want to make sure we get it right. So I did look into his a little bit into his life, not too much, but so this guy was born in 1930.
Okay.
And he lived until 2021. He made it to 91 years old. And I looked and saw that his wife passed away 3 days after he did. So this lifelong couple, they were married young and together their whole life, and they, went out together. And so he is, fortunately, I was worried that he was going to disappear on us, like right away. We just found him.
Classy Freddie Blassie.
That's right. But he's in it till 1989. So we've got a few years left here from Cal Rudman. So
gold, this guy.
Yeah. We only just so briefly touched on him in the first episode, but in our bonus content, we came across some pretty juicy stuff. So we love anytime we see that there's cards from Prism TV, Spectrum Wrestling, because there's a very, very good chance that Cal Rudman is going to be the one doing the interviews, and he's hilarious.
Yes. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
That's right. I feel, the people out, if you're from Philly or you had that access to that television, man, I'm jealous. Because I was like, not only did you have all this extra content on top of the syndicated TV, you got all these, great shows, but you got Cal. You got Killer Cal.
Right. Well, if you were in an apartment in New York City, you couldn't just turn on MSG Network. You still had to have some
satellite or something or cable. I don't really know how it worked, but it did have some exposure. It wasn't just New York that had MSG. I think there was
local bars and stuff.
There were some different areas that had it. I guess if you had once you get to the certain age of the satellite dish, the big satellite dish, that our friend's dad had, then you could start getting stuff from anywhere. But I'm sure there was a time before that really became a thing that, you were sort of limited. Hey, where you live is what dictates what you're going to have access to and what's coming on your TV. And that, obviously affects how you become a wrestling fan and what you know and what you care about and what you think's important.
It's a home of Rocky Balboa.
That's right.
Right? Home movie.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this Prism event has yet another Piper Orton match, but the important thing here is that the living legend Bruno Sammartino is the referee.
Correct. And your earlier descriptions of the street fight and, a lot of the moves, well, now that we're having such a close look, we can see that there are angles, that get replayed. I mean, you've got to when you're working night after night after night.
That's right.
So without describing too much the actual match itself.
Because it is similar in a way, the brawling and the eye gouging. Piper's always going to the eye gouging. That's how he gets his advantage, and then he starts putting the boots to him. But
the audience is so hot because Orndorff is really playing like I've got an axe to grind, and he's just furious. Get down to business. And
there's some actually pretty funny pre-match shenanigans. There's like Orndorff insists that Bruno checks Piper, and then after he's done that, Piper insists that Bruno checks Orndorff, and Bruno Sammartino insists that Cowboy Ace Bob Orton goes back to the dressing room before the match starts.
There you go. All these angles play out before the bells even rung.
That's right. Yeah, so there's some pretty funny thing. But Bruno is incredibly physical in this match, and it's kind of a one-sided thing. He seems to only really be doing it to Piper.
That's true, because he doesn't actually want people punching with a closed fist. Yeah. But somehow it's Piper's punches that he catches and prevents from landing, yes. Which will give Orndorff an opportunity to throw some punches.
There's an incredible moment where Piper's, got Orndorff in the corner and he's giving it to him, and he goes to swing, and Bruno literally uses both of his arms to hook, catch, Piper's arm and stop him from throwing the punch, and then Orndorff starts firing off right hands, and Bruno doesn't do a thing about it. It's pretty good. They end up outside the ring, and there's in that age, the table often would be right up against the ring. So there's actually a part where I think one of them lands on the bell, and you hear go ding.
That's true. It has a very awkward feel to it, where There's basically that stops, and they never go back to that in
That's
short
right.
order.
Yeah.
In a few years, you won't see anything.
Yeah, I mean,
literally
during
abutting the table, literally abutting the ring.
Yeah.
Is dangerous for everybody.
That's right. So Piper's on the outside. He uses the drink. He like smashes Orndorff in the face.
He
with a
grabs
full
somebody's
drink.
coffee. Yeah, yeah, that's right. He's ever the improviser, Roddy Piper.
And then he decides he kind of just
My latte.
gives up on the match in a way. He just picks up a chair and just walks into the ring, and Bruno sees him coming, so Bruno lunges in the way and takes the chair shot. He hits
Yeah.
Bruno with the chair.
That's right. He takes the bullet for the downed Orndorff. It's a little bit awkward, but
Yeah.
anyway, it serves the purpose, which of course is to build up ticket sales for next month.
Yeah.
You see.
So now that he's knocked down Bruno, Orndorff, that's when he fires up and he gives it to Piper, and he takes him out and he sets him up for the pile driver. But once again, Ace Bob Orton now is back out from the backstage. He's come back out into the ringside, and he nails Orndorff with the cast again. And they're putting the boots to everybody. And then Bruno gets up and starts fighting, and then Orndorff's back up, and it kind of ends in a big schmoz. And you find out that it's a DQ and that Orndorff's won. But they go to this backstage interview with Gorilla Monsoon. Unfortunately, we don't get Cal. We're backstage at Prism, and there's no Cal. I don't know what happened. He must have been sick or something.
Were we done with all the Cal Redmond details? I guess we moved on, so that was all.
Oh, yeah, we're not done with him as far as,
No, I just mean to say, I thought, did we know if he came from any other sports? Or...
He did other, in news announcing and things like that. I'd have to go back and look at the page for some more of the details, but yeah.
He was a
broadcaster.
weatherman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
we just love, about him, though, he's very charming because he seems to love his job so much that almost he can't hide the smile even when he's talking to the heels. He's just like into it so much that we watched one where Hulk Hogan can't keep a straight face even when he's like insulting Redmond. Redmond's just sitting there smiling, lapping up this, abuse and
That's
can't
right.
wait.
And Hogan's having a hard time keeping a straight face too.
Yeah, he's chuckling as he's putting down Redmond, and it's great because especially sometimes like you've got Cal smiling, grinning from ear to ear when he's talking to the heel, and then you'll cut to Cal again with his tough look.
That's right.
Now he looks like a dog you just
He's
took
stern.
away his bone.
So yeah, you get a couple backstage interviews setting up the match, and Piper and Orton find out that they're gonna have to have this match and
against Bruno and Orndorff.
I love what Piper says to Bruno. He says, "I thought you were some kind of man, but I found out you're just an average piece of garbage." It's so good. So that's going to set up a return match, which is really the way the house circuit would work, right? They would have these matches, and then you try to have a return. What's the reason somebody's going to come back? I mean, we spoke about that last time with the double Piper Flair, 91, 92, the return, and that's what it was. They set it up, and then they let you know that night after the match had happened, hey, we're going to be back, X amount of months, and, going to be another, rematch of this big match that you just loved. So it was the business model of, like, how to keep people coming back.
Well, they would actually say tickets are on sale, sometimes during
occasionally,
that. So you could probably get your ringside seats if you made a beeline right to the ticket booth right then.
That's what Ken and I did for the third in a row of those matches. So the night that Piper held up both sets of belts, well, at the halftime we were watching, it was the Beverly Brothers versus the New Foundation, and that's Owen Hart and Jim Neidhart, and they announced tickets were going on sale, and Ken and I bailed. We missed the last couple minutes of the tag match, and sure enough, we got front row seats. That's the only time I've ever had front row seats to wrestling was, because we ran out of our seats and missed part of a match and went over there, forget about those Beverly Brothers, I want front row.
Now that was the second Flair.
That's right. Yeah.
And so what did you the third card then? What was that?
It was supposed to be Jake the Snake Roberts versus Macho Man Randy Savage.
Okay, so I was there for that.
Yes, you were there. Yeah. And Jake doesn't show up, so they have Sid Justice.
Right. And Flair and Piper weren't on that card?
No, they were on the previous two cards. Yeah.
Wow, sounds like we really had a run of them.
Yeah, we had 3 cards in about 8 months or something, which often they would only come to Winnipeg once a year, and there was a couple times where they, it was like 15 months or 18 months, there were long stretches, but for whatever reason, we got 3 cards in pretty short order, and I went to all of them.
Because you think we're going to have any kind of respect for you after what you did? I thought you were some kind of man, and then I really realized after what I saw there, you're really nothing but just your average piece of garbage, but I've seen that before in Philadelphia.
Okay, so in September 23rd, I believe it's at Madison Square Gardens, there was a really big match in Andre's career, the Colossal Tussle, and that's King Kong Bundy versus Andre the Giant.
Sounds pretty good. Hopefully it's not a big choke fest. I mean, literally choking, because Andre loves that. Get his hands around your neck or anything around your neck. He'll take a soda can. Well, okay, soda can, but never mind that.
Yeah, it was definitely, when they get in the ring, Andre definitely loves to choke people, but it was a lot different than I expected it to be. It's a long match. It's almost 20 minutes. And you're kind of like, whoa, how do they have a 20-minute match between these two? This doesn't really make much sense. One cool thing is that Monsoon and Jesse are on the call. So, like, a lot of these matches we're watching, we're getting one or the other. We're getting other people. But so it gave it a big-time feel.
Well, what a main event. Like, you would think that this would be something that they'd spend a lot of time building,
Yeah.
Andre versus Bundy.
So Bundy's in the ring, and at this point, he's still with Jimmy Hart as his manager. And Andre's coming to the ring with his new manager, Captain Lou Albano.
Captain Lou, boy, he's
Gets everywhere.
he does a lot of work before he makes his hasty departure.
That's right. Vince Jr. apparently didn't like Captain Lou too much.
Actually, I just listened to a story, Greg Valentine talking about Captain Lou would get really drunk at these weekly meetings. That was mostly the office guys and the managers and only a couple of wrestlers. But yeah, he kept ribbing, Vince Jr. like, we're all in trouble when this kid takes over. We're all out of a job.
Yeah, he kind of made fun of, he kind of picked on him a bit when Vince was working for the company in his early days, and it kind of backfired on him as Vince took over. So Jesse refers to, at one point during the match, Captain Lou is chasing Jimmy Hart on the outside on several occasions, and it's kind of funny because Jesse refers to Jimmy Hart, like, in one breath. He's like, oh, he's real tough chasing a 110-pound, Jimmy Hart, and then, like, not even, like, a couple of seconds later, he's like, he's only 125 pounds, and I'm thinking, like, what did he eat in between to put on the 15 pounds?
Nice.
But, yeah, it's actually a really good match. Like, they're hitting each other really hard, and Andre's, like, as we saw in another one of our matches, he's doing a lot of, like, he's grabbing wrist locks and then, like, pressuring Bundy backwards by, like, sort of overhead wrist lock and kind of holding him in place and then backing out and just slapping him hard. But the one thing I noticed is a few times that Bundy hits the ground is how quickly he can get up. Like, we know how unbalanced Andre is at this point in his career. It's really difficult for Andre to get around the ring. He's trying not to get too far away from the ropes. He wants to be able to have that ability to, like, give himself support, whereas Bundy's, like, looking quite spry compared to Andre. So yeah, he's really fast. But there's a really weird position that they end up on the ground for a long stretch, and it's, like, kind of good storytelling. Andre gets, like, this arm bar, but he's, like, scissoring Bundy, like, with his legs, so he's got, like, his arm, trapped, and he's got his legs basically around Bundy's, like, chest and head going around, and then he's using his feet to prevent Bundy's other hand from reaching from the ropes to break the count. And that's, like, this long story in this match. It's several minutes of Andre holding this hold on the ground and Bundy struggling trying to get to the rope, because it's, like, the only way he can get out of this hold is to break the is to get the rope. And actually it ends up being that he rolls through the other way. Andre rolls him back into the middle of the ring, almost like you see some in modern day wrestling. They'll do but he doesn't let go of the hold. Like, he does like a roll, and Bundy's arm's still trapped. And at one point, Andre fell with Bundy's arm, and I was like, oh boy, that could have went wrong. Like, that could have, he could have actually snapped Bundy's arm by accident, like, just because he lost his balance there. But it's pretty neat. It's back and forth, but what they're really playing up is that Andre's come back too soon. So every time Bundy can get a shot towards his chest, his sternum, Andre really sells it hard that, like, he's really vulnerable and he's really, like, he can't take these shots. But of course it's Andre, so, he'll get his hand around Bundy's throat and choke him back into the corner and smash him and all this stuff. So the end of the match is pretty neat. Don't remember seeing this. So Andre went to give Bundy an Irish whip from corner to corner, and Bundy reverses it. So there's Andre being Irish whipped into the corner, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, I don't think I've ever seen Andre take an Irish whip.
Does he take a Bret Hart bump into the turnbuckles, or does he wind up with so that he's got his back?
Yeah, no, he turns his back into the corner, and Bundy tries for the avalanche, but Andre gets this big boot up. And so he gets the boot to the face, and Bundy takes this great spill, great bump. And then Andre comes off the ropes, walks around, and does, like, the he does, like, the earthquake, splash, butt first on Bundy's head, pretty much. It doesn't look too clean. And as he's rolling over to get the pin, in comes John Studd in street clothes, throwing fists and attacking Andre. And so it's a DQ, of course. But Andre immediately starts beating up Stud, and Stud's now on the outside of the apron. He's rolled out underneath the ropes as Andre's hitting him. So Andre's kind of chasing him into the corner with his facing outside, and that allows Bundy to come from behind and avalanche into the corner. And so they try to set up the Toronto thing again. So Stud's got Andre's legs, and Bundy's getting ready to come off the ropes and start giving him splashes again. But this time, Andre kicks his legs and kicks Stud off and rolls out of the ring and gets out of there because he decides he's not going to fight these two guys by himself.
He's wise to their tricks.
Yeah. So he goes out and gets a chair, and then he comes back in with the chair, and then Bundy and Stud take off. But I mean, all things considered, for the limitations of their movement and stuff, a pretty entertaining 20-minute match out of Bundy and Andre.
Right. Well, Bundy definitely was so imposing that I was always interested when he was in a match because you wondered how are our heroes possibly going to deal with all this humanity.
Captain Luis Albano very seldom makes any derogatory remarks about you, Jess. Why are you
Look at there,
cutting him to
Albano's
pieces?
outside the ring again, chasing down Jimmy Hart. Big tough guy, 300-pound Albano going after 125-pound Hart.
In the meantime, King Kong Bundy.
So as the Piper and Orndorff feud continues, it goes to Philadelphia, home of our new favorite commentator, interview man, stick man on the mic, Killer Cow, Rudman. And wow, this guy is so great. He seems to just support whoever he's talking to. Like he makes them all think that he's on their side. And,
right.
In a blood feud, like both person goes away thinking, well, at least Cal's got my back. And so he has his tough face that he puts on. He's like, I'm talking revenge. And he looks all serious because he's got Bruno Sammartino there to interview. Interestingly, no Orndorff. But, I mean, this is how we met, actually. This is how we discovered Rudman, was a great Orndorff interview. So Rudman interviews Sammartino. It's a pretty long interview, and it's okay. But Bruno's, not Rowdy Piper.
Yeah.
So
he's not really playing into Cal's setups.
Yeah.
Cal's giving him, juicy things, and he's kind of just...
Yeah, he was almost like, actually, we had a chance at history. He was like, who would you compare him to? And I was like, oh, Sammartino has wrestled them all.
Yeah.
But he just keeps saying, I won't do that.
Yeah.
No, I won't compare them. But then he does go on to say, Sammartino's shtick seems to be like, I've fought bigger and tougher. And he lists many of the bigger and tougher wrestlers. And he gets onto, though, some logical explanation of physics and getting old, and he's like, I took off 40 pounds because as I get older, and he just goes on.
Explains why he's 240 instead of 280 now.
It's not exciting, but anyway, that's okay because a really good interview is coming up.
Well, I do like when Sammartino starts calling at the end. He starts calling Piper just garbage, and he's like,
well, yeah, Redmond's kind of like,
funny.
well, you got to give Piper some credit,
He's got personality, and he's like, I don't give him. You think that? I don't think that.
Right? Yeah. So. But we move on to Rudman interviewing the heel team, both of them, Cowboy Bob Orton and Roddy Piper. Well, it starts in with, the other thing I was going to say about, is Cal gets in close,
Right.
This is almost like a Tic Tac commercial, you know what I mean? And it's a real tight shot on the two guys, only just from below the shoulders. And anyway, he's nestled in there. And the other thing I guess was that by the end of the interview, Cal he can't keep the tough face. He's just too happy. He loves his job too much, which is great. We love, that's the best. But he loves his job so much that he can't stay tough. And, by the end of it, he's kind of grinning at Bruno and, and like, you're the greatest, He loves everybody. So he interviews the heel team. And, again, Bob Orton's voice is awesome. Well, here, we're going to do this. And
that's right.
He gets some shots in on Sammartino.
He says, Orton says the stuff about the guys that Sammartino is bringing up are so old that the people that know who they are have already died and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty good. And Piper, oh man, I recommend you go and check this, check it out because there's too many gems to even remember. But as usual, Cal Redman is on the side of who's ever on the other side of the microphone. So he's just loving Piper, and Piper plays into it. He's a very, intuitive performer and responsive to whatever he's getting, right? So, I mean, he's like, you're a wonderful human being. And actually, Cal Redman at one point, he's like, what is Rod Piper? He says, like, I know you're one of my biggest fans. He's like, I am. He's just like, it's like the Looney Tunes, like, with the one dog who's just walking along. The other one's like, anyway. So at one point, Piper grabs Redman and gives him a big smack on the forehead, and Cal Redman's just in seventh heaven.
Well, because Cal Redman's supporting him, saying that there was something, I missed what he was referring to, but about a slow count. Like, you won that match, he says to Piper.
And Piper's just like, we are the best interview I've ever had.
He's like, well, it takes a man of your integrity and your glasses to see this. And then he gives him the smooch on the forehead.
Yeah, it's really great. All hail Philadelphia and Spectrum TV. Prism TV at the TV. Spectrum. That's the venue.
Spectrum Wrestling on Prism.
Okay, and the venue, they call it the Spectrum, don't they?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we get to have this revenge grudge match between Bruno Sammartino and Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff versus Cowboy Bob Orton and Rowdy Roddy Piper. And, it's a chaotic match. At one point, I was like, has the bell rung? We were like 5 to 6 minutes in of like both guys brawling in the ring, both guys brawling out the ring. And I think, it was like 5 or 6 minutes before there was finally 2 guys on the apron, 2 guys in the ring.
Yeah. In that beginning part, Orndorff and Bruno seemed to be taking turns smashing both of Piper and Orton's heads into the tables. There was for some reason there was like multiple tables right outside of the ring with people sitting at it, like not just the Monsoon and whoever, but it was also other people, and they're just like bashing their heads off these tables, and then Bruno switches in and then he starts bashing their heads off the tables.
Oh, I forgot 2 of the best lines that Piper had. Bruno was talking about his fitness and he said, I run 8 miles a day, and then Piper comes in, he's running from his wife. That's what he's 8 miles. And he's like, he's lost 40 pounds. Yeah, well, I guess that might have come off his scalp there. And he got a little less hair up there, don't you, Bruno? Because Bruno used to have the big afro, and now he's just got a wispy comb over. So Piper was on fire with those put-downs.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, the opening of this is just an ass-kicking. The good guys are just like on them for minutes at a time, just beating the crap out of them, and they're just pinballing all over the place.
Yeah, Orndorff comes off the ropes quite a few. I mean, like as in climbs the second and third turnbuckle, gets all the way to the top rope a couple of times for elbows and fists.
Yeah.
And of course, each one of these matches that we've covered has at one point somebody's grabbed Cowboy Bob's Orton's cast and used it on Piper. Like,
that's right. They smack him they use Orton as a weapon against Piper.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
So it's a very unscientific street fight brawl, and actually, to my surprise, they decide to let the heels win it. It's a double count, not double count. You have both Sammartino and Orndorff, having taken some, now it comes back to me. So it seems like a bit of a botch because a chair gets involved. There absolutely should have been a disqualification. The good guys are outside the ring, and Orton comes out with a chair and hits probably Bruno from behind.
Yes, Bruno from behind, right in front of the ref.
The ref is looking at, Bruno and Orndorff and counting them and ignores this chair shot. Orton gets back in the ring. The referee continues his count, and he counts out the good guys, and the heels win. And then the good guys eventually, what happens next?
I know that they fill the ring with like chairs and like tables.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Orton and Piper are trying to stand their ground, like ready to fight.
Yeah.
And then they start looking nervously around as the chairs start landing in the ring, and then Orndorff throws a table in.
Yep.
And then the good guys get in the ring, and the bad guys take off because they don't, for whatever reason, they don't want to.
Yeah. And then the good guys hang around for 3 or 4 minutes kicking the ropes because they're angry that they actually lost the match.
And they end up over at like Monsoon's desk, and they're talking to him, and Monsoon's like, "This is a travesty. You gotta like."
Yeah, that's right. There's some on-camera banter with the
lobbying
ringside commentators.
It's really quite entertaining, though. But it was surprising to sort of be this big revenge match where the good guys don't like. I mean, they certainly kick the crap out of Piper and Orton for good stretches, but I mean, they don't get the considering the way it ends, it's kind of not what you expect.
They lose.
They lose.
Help yourself, and I know you're one of my greatest fans.
I am.
I like you too.
And in fairness to you, when they were counting, you had that match won, and it was going 1, 2.
That's
I
true.
I mean,
That's 100%
no one
true.
brought that
Only
up.
someone with a flash like that and glasses like that could be able to make an estimation like that. You're a wonderful human being. Thank you.
Well, we're going to see what happens right now.
So something that will betray our age is this concept of Saturday morning cartoons. Y'all don't know what it was like when there wasn't a whole channel dedicated to
multiple channels.
Yeah, exactly. Animation, never mind streaming services. Like back in the day, you had CBS, NBC, and ABC competing for eyeballs on Saturday morning. Now, wrestling did become a very important part of our Saturday mornings, but for me, before I really knew about wrestling, I knew about Scooby-Doo, and there were times too where I lived in places that didn't even have one channel. Like I think I was in PEI when I was 7 years old, and the TV was not a part of my life. As I lived in the Maritimes. Anyway, once a week, the world revolved around youngsters, and that was on TV Saturday morning. I wish I'd had the discipline to be up at 7 a.m. watching the cartoons, but there were silly little kid cartoons, and then there were cooler cartoons with swords and monsters. Anyway, at one point, they actually made a Saturday morning cartoon about Hulk Hogan and all his buddies, and it landed right at the time where, well, it wasn't actually ideal because I didn't have that foresight to beg somebody to get out the VHS and to record it. There were lots of shows that I ended up watching because they were on at 10:30 when I was awake. But if you were an 8 a.m. slot, no, I didn't end up watching it. So I had all this excitement about the idea of there being a Saturday morning cartoon that featured Hulk Hogan because he had left the AWA far too soon for our tastes.
That's right.
But I only really got to see it years later on YouTube, and I have vague memories of Bobby Heenan and a bunch of zombies. Yeah, one episode featured zombies.
Okay.
But not the flesh-eating, bite-your-face-off zombies, but Saturday morning, suitable for all audiences zombies. And mostly just whitish-looking guys. And I did watch another clip recently, and the voices are familiar because either these are the same actors that we were watching possibly on Hanna-Barbera or other stuff.
There was different people. The original plan was actually to use the wrestlers themselves, the real voices, and to actually have like the storylines intermingle with the real life, action. But they quickly realized that like schedules and how much traveling the wrestlers were doing and how difficult it would have been at the time to record this material, all these things led them to make the decision to not use that and to just use voice actors. So
the only real Hulk Hogan you got was at the end when they had a really cool little kind of, it was only about 5 to 10 seconds, but there was a really exciting song that I was surprised didn't show up anywhere else. And you saw a real life Hulk Hogan. The camera was overhead, so they could really emphasize the effect of there he is standing by himself, and then he starts pumping his fist or like rallying, and then he gets rushed by like dozens of children as the camera pulls back, and you see like there's hundreds of Hulkamaniacs surrounding him, and this really cool song like the piano's like na na na.
That's right.
Na, na, na. Well, there's this Hulk.
That's it. Yeah, it's the Hulk theme, which ended up on the wrestling album. So like that song was written for him to be his theme song because McMahon wanted to move away from Eye of the Tiger, and so they wrote. Na, 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 na. I love the song. I think it was awesome.
Yeah,
it was great.
I like going back now. It's got this.
Yeah, and they did have little live segments. Usually with Mean Gene and different wrestlers. I saw one recently. I was watching a clip. It was Big John Studd. And he's, talking with Mean Gene. He's in his wrestling gear. He's standing there, shirtless. And this woman walks by with this jug of what looks like some sort of, blender fruit drink or something, like someone's, nutritional supplement, smoothie maybe. And I think she's supposed to be taking it to Hulk, but he, like John Studd, takes it. He's like, give that to me. And then he takes the drink and then he makes the sour face. He doesn't like it. So it's all very childish, light, sort of it's like these watered down versions of their characters because they're obviously they're appealing to the youngest of ages here. So
you have the camps. You've got Hogan and his buddies are Junkyard Dog,
of course,
Andre the Giant, I believe Jimmy Snuka,
even though he was gone, he was still in it. Yeah,
Wendy Richter,
yeah,
Captain Albano,
yeah.
And on the
Tito and Steamboat got to make a couple of appearances, I believe.
Okay. And then on the heel side, they were led by, as they should be,
yes,
Rowdy Roddy.
That's right.
And you've got Sheik and Volkov,
of course,
perfectly, cartoon characters for this kind of thing. And then on Big John Studd,
Big John Studd was there,
the cartoon version of him.
Moolah to oppose Richter, and Heenan did make a couple of appearances. He actually wasn't on very much. I thought he was on more than he was. When I kind of looked into it, I was like, oh, he actually wasn't on that much.
Right.
And so a famous actor from Everyone Loved Raymond, so the older brother, I believe it's Brad Garrett, I believe is the name. He's actually the voice of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, well, it's deep. It works.
Yeah, he's got that deep voice.
And the other thing is that this Hulk Hogan, he's got no problems with the hairline, dude.
Yeah. So I do remember watching it. I didn't watch them over and over, so I don't have a ton of memories. I do remember there was like one episode where like this movie set wanted to use like junkyard dogs, like because they all had their own vehicles or something like that, and they wanted to use his beater, his jalopy or whatever, and Roddy Piper was all upset that they were going to use his, junkyard, so he wanted him to use his.
Big kilt, he had a bagpipe mobile?
Yeah, he had a bagpipe mobile, yeah. So he does all, I can't remember how it works out, but he pulls some shenanigans so things get switched around, so his vehicle gets used instead, but then he very quickly realizes as soon as they start filming that the only purpose of their vehicle is to get destroyed. So he like sends his vehicle in to get like, I think, crushed or something. It's just stuff like that.
Sounds
just silly fun stuff.
I don't think Orndorff was on the court.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, no. So it was that time of like making money in all these different ways that nobody had ever thought of with wrestling. All those different types of merchandise beyond. I think like in the old territory days, got people like Jim Cornette as kids. They broke into the businesses like photographers, and they would take pictures of the wrestlers and then sell them. At the show, you could get like a glossy picture of like your favorite wrestler from somebody like a Jim Cornette, depending on what arena you're in. And there was, some minor merchandise, shirts and stuff like that, often sort of instigated by the wrestlers themselves. But, McMahon, he figured it out. It was like lunch boxes and like pencil cases and duffel bags and just, on and on and on and on. And eventually, like the stuff they had for sale, like in the WWF magazine when it came out in those early years, there's just so much stuff in there. And
I do got to say, I think there's a distinct lack of rock on this program. Rock and wrestling?
Yeah, that's right.
There's no Cyndi Lauper or nothing. No Bruce Springsteen. There's no rock on this rock and wrestling.
No, it's just, it's that idea that it's supposed to be connected even though it kind of isn't.
In the title, and that's it.
That's right. Yeah, but it's CBS, and so it's like, as they're making this big frontier onto NBC with Saturday Night's Main Event, they at the same time were in relationship with CBS, a totally competing and different network.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah. And that's Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling cartoon.
Without the rock.
Without the rock. Okay, we're just about ready to wrap up the first half, and we do want to take a moment, we want to pause and look back, because when I put together a list of matches, one of the matches we wanted to watch, couldn't find a video for it. And then suddenly, recently, did find the video. And it's such an important match that we want to just, we want to go back and look at it. But also because of the context of it, we don't want to be out of order, let's say. So we want, letting everyone know this took place June 29. So chronologically, it would have been one of the first things we would have been talking about. But we're going to talk about it now. And that is Paul Orndorff and Hulk Hogan versus Roddy Piper and Cowboy Bob Orton in a tag match.
Which should have been the WrestleMania main event, except for the fact that they needed the celebrity angle to increase the promotion and bring more viewers. But it is now known that Mr. T, if you watch the match too, you see that T struggles at WrestleMania. So a much better match would have been.
You're right. It would have been a better match, but Orndorff by WrestleMania, they would have had to have done something to turn Orndorff a good guy before WrestleMania. Snuka could have been in there, let's say, with Hogan instead, right? Like maybe Hogan and Snuka versus Piper and Orndorff. That that obviously would have been a better match than T.
Yeah. Well, even after WrestleMania, the fallout for WrestleMania seems obvious that this is where you're going to go. And it doesn't get a lot of airtime, or it doesn't really seem to be much of a house show fallback. But you've got WrestleMania, and you've got Paul Orndorff abandoned by Piper and Orton, while Orndorff and Piper are fighting Hogan. So, if the bad guys turn on one of the other bad guys, you think that there's going to be a team up of these two good guys.
Yeah.
But it only happens this once. Really, they pretty quickly they move Hogan on to other contenders. And I now realize that Orndorff was drawing so much heat with his Piper feud that they quickly realized we're going to have excitement with Hogan no matter who he wrestles. So let's separate him from the Piper Orndorff angle, and we'll just have two good things instead of one incredibly great thing.
Allow them to fill their cards in a different way and split up their forces as they toured across the country in multiple venues at the same time.
But I'm glad that we do have a record of the natural fallout from WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Which is, Hogan takes on, in the long term, Hogan does take on Orndorff as his, number one buddy.
Exactly, yeah.
And so, but that's more of a, they start wrestling, guys like in the future, they'll wrestle our famous Stud and Bundy powerhouse team. But there is bonus content that we encourage you to check out on Patreon covering that in detail. So we're big fans of Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
Definitely.
Anyway, so let's get to this match, which, as you say, occurred earlier than much of the content that we covered that we've covered so far in this second episode of Legendary Wrestling Obsession.
Right.
So this is so great because no modern WWE producer's got his hands on it.
That's
and
right.
you're in for a good time when you get to hear the original music.
That's right.
I'm talking Rocky III, Eye of the Tiger Survivor.
That's
oh,
right.
yeah. And so the music's playing and...
and it sounds good. And they're coming out together. They look awesome as a pair coming out.
Hogan and Orndorff, yeah. We are.
And you get the backstage, like they do the walk together. Like you get the gorilla position, Hogan and Orndorff together.
There's a funny clip actually of like a hallway where some people with the backstage passes have got their, their red Solo cup drinks and they're just like shooting the shit. And Hogan and Orndorff are
standing there waiting.
In the background. I know that was a bit of a slip.
And Hogan's got this. He's got the shredded. He's got a white shirt on, like American made, but it's shredded at the bottom. So like it's a little bit of a different look.
And the other thing he's doing is that headband that he would pull down over one eye, like half pirate thing. Yeah, and so as they come out, and he's like eyeballing the bad guys, he's got a bit of a lifts up his thing, peekaboo, I see you, pulls it back down. It's kind of silly how he likes to cover one of his eyes with his headband. But anyway, so incredible excitement in the crowd to have Hogan and Orndorff versus Piper
and something
and
crazy happens on the walkout. The camera can't catch it, but you're following them out, and then it's like the cameraman gets stuck behind these security guards. So instead of like the camera at the back of Hogan and Orndorff, it's at the back of these jabronis, like these security guards. And I think somebody pulls Hogan into the crowd, like not into the crowd, but it maybe grabs his arm and pulls him into the railing because all of a sudden, the camera shifts. And there's this big commotion at the rail, in front of them, and you can see Orndorff, but you can't see Hogan. And then finally, next thing you know, it kind of cuts to a new camera, like a different camera, and now Hogan's up on the apron. But I do think there was a moment where maybe a fan grabbed Hogan's arm and wouldn't let go or something, and there was a bit of a delay.
Right. Well, these are the days before they had a wider aisle.
Yeah.
You're going to walk that aisle. Someone's going to grab your arm and hold you. You need a nice wide aisle.
Yeah. But man, when they get in the ring and there's that moment before the match is going to start and the music's still playing, it's still blaring loud, and the two teams are staring off at each other, and Hogan's doing this big presentation of Mr. Orndorff. He keeps looking over at Piper and Orton and pointing to Mr. Wonderful, there you are, here you have it, this is what you asked for, kind of thing. It's really overdone, but it's pretty funny.
Hogan's got this kind of campy way of overacting, for the crowd, really sort of pantomime theater style. But anyway, that's right. He does a lot of that. So the before the music even ends,
it's so great.
The action begins.
That's right.
And Piper kind of tries to does a flying tackle, but sort of misses.
Misses completely, yeah.
Orndorff sidesteps him, and so he kind of, with his right arm, he's tries to swipe out. But anyway.
It looks like his neck and his head bounce off the bottom rope, Piper. So it's, and then right away, Orndorff's on him, giving it to him. So it's so great.
Mm-hmm. Lots of action. And, of course, somebody's going to grab Orton's cast and hit Piper with it.
It happens pretty quick. But yeah, we get 3, 4, 5 seconds of good brawling. To the music, and we were laughing, going they needed a sound editor because they cut the music off just a couple of seconds before the chorus, and it was no, keep going. But it's a great frenetic opening. It's everything's happening so fast. I think Hogan ends up on the outside with Orton, and they're just brawling all these matches we've seen. They fight.
They sure do. So lots of cheating and lots of emotional punches.
Yeah.
Emotional punches. Yeah, the stakes are high. in this match. The details in the middle are a little less foggy than the strange things that occurred towards the end. So not only have they got the cast, but there's tape around the cast so that, the choking can happen.
Yeah.
And also Piper's got some brass knuckles in his trunks.
Yeah. Well, at one point he starts involving the shirt. The shirt becomes like, oh no, that's the Bruno match. Sorry, we missed that. That was the thing Jeff was thinking about, was this like, where did this choking happening that he's seeing? And we think if just for a second flashing back to that match, it's like there's a lot of choking with a shirt in that match, and then Orndorff's choking Piper, and then Orton comes behind Orndorff and starts choking him. It's like a train of choking.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to this match.
Right. So great match. I'm glad we got to see it.
Yeah.
And as far as what happens, there's a bizarre, looks like the booking got botched a little bit towards the end where, sometimes a person is supposed to not know who's behind them, but how could they not because they saw them, that kind of thing. And so things get a little weird. Piper's going to hit Orndorff with some brass knucks, but he ends up kind of like sizing him up and winding up and walking backwards away from Orndorff to really get a good punch at him that Hogan's waiting behind him and grabs his arms. And then, now Piper is like completely helpless. And then Piper kind of drops the brass knucks, but in a weird way, he throws them to Orndorff.
He does it in such a way that Orndorff can catch them. Yeah.
Yeah. Drops/throws. And so Orndorff gets the brass knucks and, plays to the crowd. They're like, yeah. So Orndorff backs up, bounces off the ropes, and goes to hit Piper. But Orton, from outside the ring, has actually, along the mat, he's got his hands now on Piper's feet, and he yanks Piper. He ends up pulling Piper through Hogan's legs to the outside of the ring, as Orndorff is sizing up this big brass knuckle blow, and so the brass knuckles end up hitting Hogan, and this is normally how they split teams up, right?
Exactly.
And so the it's really weird. It almost looks like that because Piper disappears at the last second, Orndorff sees it and doesn't actually clobber Hogan with the brass knuckles.
His fist definitely hits Hogan in the leg, but Hogan doesn't sell it at all, like he's been punched.
Because he's gonna go for Piper's jaw. Piper gets yanked away. Orndorff ends up punching Hogan hitting him in the thigh and like almost headbutting Hogan in the nuts.
Oh yeah, he runs shoulder first into his stomach pretty much. Because Piper's all of a sudden
it
not
looks
there.
really awkward. So they just keep moving on. It's like nobody stops to say what just happened. The crowd's just cheering. Like never mind that weird finish. Oh, I guess we neglected to say the pinfall was of course Bob Orton because Piper famously wouldn't job.
That's right.
So was that a backslide or a wrestling?
Piper and Orton are on the outside fighting, and the camera misses part of it. It looks like Orton's lifting Hogan up for a body slam, but Hogan goes over his shoulders and lands behind him, so that he's like, ta-da, I'm behind you, and then he rolls him up from behind, like
it is a
roll up. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a very quick count.
Yeah. That's right. Joey Morella, as Vince McMahon or Jesse would pick on Joey Morella.
That's right. To tease Monsoon.
Yep. And but what was really after the match, you get way more action. So the heels, I guess we definitely, the botch we talked about, those brass knuckles, was like the end of the post-match schmozzle. But the post-match schmozzle started with the good guys in the ring taunting the bad guys, and the bad guys are like, yeah, let's go get them. So of all the silly thing, Orton is like, okay, but first I need a chair. So Orton gets a chair, and he throws it into the ring, and Hogan picks it up. It's like, come here, I hate you with a chair. And then Orton's kind of like, that wasn't a good idea. But
and then Piper's like, don't worry, I still got brass knuckles.
So they rushed them anyway. The heels go into the ring to fight the good guys. Hogan's got a chair. Orndorff's just waiting.
Yeah.
And Rowdy's got his brass knuckles. So, like I said, all this stuff happens to the point where Orndorff's going to use the brass knuckles on Piper. But the weird botchy thing, now the heels are on the outside, and the good guys do the pose down.
Yeah.
Crowd goes nuts.
And they get their music back.
And they get their music back. So there was like 4 minutes of action after the actual pinfall.
They did land one brass knuckle shot to Orndorff before the good guys took back over. And it's interesting because Orndorff seems to shake it off pretty quickly. Like, he sells it when it happens, but he's fairly quickly, after that, back and ready to fight.
Yeah, he doesn't blade, and he does recover. I mean, sometimes when an object will take a participant out of the fight, and
that's right,
they're
exactly.
done.
Yeah, we've seen other things with Orndorff, cash shots, whatnot, where he really sells it and he's done for a while.
Yeah. So the cast shot becomes somehow survivable in this because there's been cash shots. I mean, this first half has been loaded with shots from the cast from Cowboy Bob Orton.
First from Kansas City, weighing 249 pounds, Ace Cowboy Bob Orton. His partner from Glasgow, Scotland, weighing 233 pounds, Roddy Piper.
Uh-oh. There it is.
The opponent from Texas, weighing 200.
Pandemonium broken loose here in the Spectrum as this capacity crowd is on its feet. I'll tell you, man, there's the championship belt around the waist of the Hulkster, and he and Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, are getting on against the challengers, if you will. Cowboy Ace Bob Orton and Roddy Piper. Oh, here they are. They're underway. Look out, folks. 4 men in the ring, all going bananas at the same time.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have our section on corrections, sort of expansions, let's say. It's not always about correcting things, but just adding more context.
Expansions. We're buying up all the talent.
That's right. We got to...
Everybody's going to work for the legendary Wrestling Obsession League.
Part 2, or 2.0.
Wow.
and then, of course, we're going to get right into the Saturday's main event. We'll have some fun with the section we like to call What If, and that'll close the show out. So stick around. We'll be right back.